My best friend refused to cut short her luxurious retreat from vacation, opting instead to prolong her sun-drenched escape rather than hasten to her gravely ill daughter's hospital bedside, whose life hung precariously in the balance after a desperate, harrowing suicide attempt. So, with unwavering determination, I meticulously documented every heartbreaking detail, every dismissive message, every blatant act of parental neglect, ensuring that the legal system would ultimately strip her of custody. Now, an unsettling specter, she hovers outside her daughter's new sanctuary, cloaked in a thinly veiled disguise, a haunting reminder of the past that refuses to fade. Reagan, my ostensibly devoted best friend, had always harbored this intense, almost singular dream of motherhood. And that, perhaps, is the most perplexing, almost maddening, irony in this tragic saga. From our giggling, hopeful teenage years, her conversations were invariably peppered with vivid fantasies, the ideal mother she envisioned herself becoming, the boisterous brood of children she would lovingly raise. So, when her daughter, Lily, finally entered the world, a miniature reflection of all her aspirations, Reagan wasn't just over the moon, she orbited galaxies beyond it. And I, witnessing her incandescent joy, shared her elation with an equal, almost visceral, happiness. It was a luminosity I've never witnessed before, a radiant glow that seemed to emanate from her very core, painting her in hues of pure, unadulterated maternal bliss. Our daughters, Lily and my own Emma, didn't just grow up together. They were inextricably woven into each other's lives, virtually inseparable sisters bound by shared laughter, whispered secrets, and the comforting rhythm of childhood. Their days were a delightful blur of shared sleepovers, spontaneous adventures, and holiday celebrations seamlessly transitioning between our two homes. A symbiotic arrangement that felt utterly natural. Then, the swift, often unforgiving, currents of time carried us forward 15 years. Reagan approached me with a seemingly innocent request. Could I graciously host Lily for a week while she indulged in a solo, sun-drenched escape to the exotic shores of Bali? This wasn't an anomaly, mind you, not in the slightest. Reagan had always cultivated a penchant for these self-prescribed breaks, viewing them as essential rejuvenations. And truth be told, Lily's presence in my home was already a delightful, almost permanent, fixture, a testament to our intertwined family lives. The initial days unfolded uneventfully, a tranquil prelude to the impending storm. A tableau of typical teenage endless Netflix marathons, mountains of sugary junk food wrappers, and the comfortable chaos that accompanies adolescent freedom. But as the sun dipped below the horizon on day 3, an ominous shift occurred, a subtle tremor preceding a seismic event. At dinner, my voice echoed up the stairs, a gentle summons for Lily to join us, but it met with an unnerving silence. Emma, her brow furrowed with mild concern, mentioned she hadn't glimpsed Lily since our midday meal. A cold, creeping dread began to coil itself in the pit of my stomach, a primal instinct whispering that something was profoundly amiss. Driven by that intensifying unease, I ascended the stairs, my footsteps heavy. I rapped gently on her door, then more insistently, but only the hollow silence answered me. My hand instinctively reached for the doorknob, twisting it, only to find it stubbornly locked, an invisible barrier confirming my worst fears. Lily, open and guileless, never locked her door. This single, unusual detail screamed a warning. A chilling certainty solidified. Something was gravely wrong, far beyond a typical teenage mood swing. With a sudden, desperate surge of adrenaline, I snatched the spare key from its accustomed spot in the hallway drawer. As the lock clicked, a sound disproportionately loud in the suffocating quiet, I pushed the door open, my heart hammering a frantic, terrifying rhythm against my ribs. There she was, my sweet Lily, a fragile porcelain doll, lying utterly motionless on her bed, her chest rising and falling with an almost imperceptible, shallow breath. The bedside table was a chilling still life, an alarming array of empty medication bottles scattered like discarded hopes, and a single, neatly folded note, its edges stark white against the muted covers. A blinding wave of terror washed over me, blurring my vision through hot, hunched tears as my trembling fingers fumbled to dial 911, the numbers appearing as abstract blurs on the screen. Behind me, Emma stood petrified, a statue carved from fear, her small voice a choked whimper, repeatedly asking, "What's happening? What's wrong with Lily?" But my own throat was constricted, utterly incapable of forming a single coherent word, lost in the deafening roar of my own panic. From that moment, time seemed to accelerate, collapsing into a frantic, disorienting blur of urgent action. Within what felt like mere heartbeats, the piercing wail of sirens materialized, and the ambulance, a beacon of urgent hope, pulled up. I found myself simultaneously rattling off Lily's medical history to a pair of grim-faced EMTs and frantically tapping out a desperate plea to a neighbor to retrieve Emma, who was still trembling. Lost and vulnerable, in the hallway, buckled into the jarring confines of the ambulance, rushing Lily towards an uncertain fate, my thoughts, though fractured, turned to Reagan. I dialed her number, reaching her, predictably, amidst the sun-drenched, carefree ambience of her resort. My voice, ragged and raw, broke into choking sobs as I struggled to articulate the nightmare that had just unfolded. But instead of the immediate, visceral alarm any mother would express, there was a beat of unsettling silence, a palpable hesitation on Reagan's end. Then her voice, astonishingly flat and devoid of genuine concern, cut through my anguish. Is it really that serious? Or maybe she just wanted attention. My stomach plummeted, as if I'd been struck, a sickening freefall. My head reeled, swimming in a dizzying vortex of disbelief and an acid, terrifying anger. At the hospital, amidst the sterile whiteness and the hushed urgency, the doctor delivered the stark, clinical reality. Lily's fragile body required an immediate stomach pump. I immediately relayed this grim update to Reagan, a frantic text punctuated by a desperate, unspoken plea. Surely now, I thought, the gravity of the situation will finally pierce through her vacation haze. But Reagan's subsequent message, cold and devoid of empathy, landed a devastating blow, a verbal punch that literally knocked the wind out of me, leaving me gasping in stunned agony. Her words, a chilling testament to her detached indifference, flickered across my screen. Changing flights is $200. It's expensive. Plus, you don't have to go to the hospital every day. That's literally what nurses are for. The casual cruelty of it, the cold calculation, was sickening. I stared blankly at the infuriating words on my phone, my blood not merely boiling but surging with a volcanic, incandescent rage. Every fiber of my being screamed for me to unleash a torrent of justified fury, but a deeper, more profound instinct held me back. Lily, fragile and broken, needed my unwavering presence, my solace. Far more than Reagan deserved my futile drama. Without a moment's hesitation, I canceled work, sacrificing hard-earned vacation days, and transformed my life into a vigil. For 3 unyielding, exhausting nights, I maintained my lonely vigil, huddled in a stiff hospital chair, a silent, unwavering sentinel beside Lily's pale, motionless form. One desolate night, as the fluorescent hospital lights cast long, sterile shadows, Lily's voice, barely a whisper, pierced through the quiet. "Auntie," she confided, "I think Mommy doesn't love me anymore." Does she, her eyes brimming with tears, pleaded for an answer as she asked, "Why isn't she coming back for me?" The question hung in the air, a cruel, suffocating weight. How could I possibly respond to such an innocent, yet utterly devastating, query? All I could do was pull her close, holding her fragile body against mine, offering the only comfort I possessed. But beneath the embrace, a tidal wave of scorching anger surged within my chest, burning for the mother who had so carelessly broken her child's heart. Throughout all this, despite the growing chasm between us, I diligently continued to send Reagan constant, detailed updates, clinical progress reports, candid photos of Lily's slow recovery, and heartfelt texts outlining her emotional fragility. Yet, each reply I received was a miniature dagger, progressively shorter, colder, stripped bare of any genuine maternal concern, merely curt acknowledgments or dismissive quips. Simultaneously, her social media feed became a grotesque highlight reel of her tropical escape, a constant stream of sun-kissed beach selfies. Brazenly captioned, "Living my best life." The stark contrast was a slap in the face. It was in those moments, witnessing her performative joy while Lily suffered, that a horrifying realization crystallized with agonizing clarity. The Reagan I had known, the one who so fervently championed her identity as a devoted mom, had not merely changed. She had utterly and irrevocably vanished, replaced by a stranger I barely recognized. The dim Lily was finally discharged, a fragile ghost of her former self. I had meticulously transformed a spare room in my home into a sanctuary, a safe, comforting heaven imbued with warmth, soft lighting, and familiar comforts designed to cradle her tender recovery. During this period, I made countless attempts to engage Reagan in a serious conversation about Lily's emotional state, about the terrifying depth of her despair. But each attempt was met with the same dismissive wave of a hand, a casual shrug, or a curt change of subject. Reagan finally deigned to grace my doorstep a full 24 hours after her plane had touched down, radiant with a deep tan and exuding an air of self-satisfied, utter relaxation, as if she'd returned from a spa retreat rather than a life-altering crisis. Her reunion with Lily was a painful spectacle, an awkward, almost perfunctory half-hug, barely an acknowledgement, followed by an immediate, jarring inquiry about the trivial matter of her left-behind luggage, a stark testament to her priorities. As I carefully, almost tentatively, began to outline Lily's delicate, comprehensive recovery plan, a roadmap for healing not just physically, but emotionally, a storm gathered in Reagan's eyes. Her gaze, initially distant, began to darken, and her jaw clenched tighter with each carefully chosen word I uttered, a visible manifestation of her rising fury. Then, with a sudden, jarring jolt, Reagan snapped. She sprang to her feet, her composure utterly shattered. Her voice sharp as she hurled her first accusation. I was parenting her child behind her back, usurping her role, undermining her authority. Her voice, raw with indignation, escalated into a furious shout, accusing me of overstepping boundaries, of blowing things out of proportion, painting me as the villain in her distorted narrative. And then, the ultimate, venomous betrayal, delivered with a contemptuous sneer. It was probably just for attention, she spat, her words laced with chilling dismissal, utterly negating Lily's profound pain. It was precisely at that agonizing moment that a small, choked sob ripped through the air from the hallway, a sound that froze my blood. There stood Lily, a spectral figure, utterly frozen in the doorway, silent tears carving paths down her pale cheeks, witnessing her mother's brutal denigration of her suffering. Reagan, however, offered barely a dismissive glance in her daughter's direction, her rage blinding her to the raw anguish etched on Lily's face. A surge of protective fury ignited within me, my heart pounding like a war drum. "Are you kidding me?" I shouted, my voice raw with disbelief and incandescent rage, the words tearing from my throat. I unleashed the truth, a desperate, searing accusation. "You chose the beach over your own dying daughter. You chose a vacation over her life." But Reagan merely scoffed, a sound laden with dismissive contempt, her eyes rolling in a gesture of utter boredom. "Teens are dramatic," she drawled. "You should have known better than to fall for it." At that exact, unbearable point, the dam finally burst. That was it. I snapped, every carefully contained emotion erupting, and I unloaded everything, a torrent of suppressed truths flooding the room. I accused her, with every ounce of my being, of being monumentally selfish, of consistently, pathologically putting herself first, her self-indulgence eclipsing every maternal instinct. I hurled the cruelest truth. Lily's life, I spat, was apparently only worth a paltry $200 to you. Reagan's voice startlingly lowered, but it was not defeat. It was something far more chilling, venomous and cold, a serpent's hiss. Her words, delivered with chilling precision, pierced the air. You don't understand what it's like needing a break from your kids in that precise, devastating instant. The last vestiges of our decades-long friendship, thin and brittle as old glass, shattered completely, fracturing into irreparable fragments. The veil dropped, and I finally saw Reagan, stripped bare of all pretense, for who she truly was, a hollow, self-absorbed entity. And in that terrifying clarity, I knew, with absolute gut-wrenching certainty, that our friendship, once a bedrock of my life, was irrevocably beyond repair. Reagan, fueled by her own twisted logic, abruptly snatched Lily's small bag. Her eyes narrowed with imperious command, and demanded Lily leave with her, as if her daughter were a mere possession to be claimed. But Lily, her fragile spirit finally broken by her mother's cruelties, bolted towards my bathroom, slamming the door shut. From behind the locked door, her anguished sobs became uncontrollable, a raw, visceral refusal to be subjected to her mother's presence any longer. It was then that Reagan completely lost it, her already frayed composure disintegrating entirely. Her voice rose to a shrill, hysterical shriek, yelling wildly, her accusations spiraling into outright delusion. I was kidnapping her daughter. She claimed a monstrous distortion of reality. And before I could even process the absurdity of her claims, her phone, a weapon in her hand, was already pressed to her ear. She was calling the police, her eyes glinting with malicious triumph, her desperation escalating into a dangerous, vindictive ploy. True to her vindictive word, the ominous wail of sirens pierced the neighborhood quiet within minutes, rapidly growing louder. Soon, the kaleidoscope of red and blue lights began their unsettling dance, casting alternating, spectral flashes across my living room walls, transforming the familiar space into a scene of stark, surreal drama. I stood rooted at the window, my gaze fixed on the unfolding spectacle outside, two uniformed officers emerging from their patrol car, their figures silhouetted against the flashing lights. Behind me, Reagan, a coiled spring of frenetic energy, paced relentlessly, her phone still clutched like a talisman of vengeance in her hand. "They're here," she announced, her voice a chilling confection, dripping with satisfaction, a triumphant sneer contorting her features. "Now," she hissed, "we'll see who's really in the wrong here." Before their knuckles could even connect with the wood, I swung the door open, my posture resolute, though my heart still hammered against my ribs. The officers, a younger woman with dark hair efficiently pulled back and an older man whose temples were threaded with distinguished gray, introduced themselves with calm professionalism as Officers Chen and Martinez. But before I could utter a single word, Reagan pushed past me, her eyes blazing, and immediately launched into her story, a carefully crafted narrative of victimhood and injustice. Her voice rose, shrill and theatrical, as she declared, gesturing wildly for emphasis, "This woman is keeping my daughter against her will. My daughter, Lily, is only 15, and she's refusing to let her come home with me. I have custody. This is kidnapping." Officer Chen, her expression unreadable, but her gaze sharp, patiently listened, then quietly pulled out a notepad, a stark contrast to the swirling chaos within me, as Officer Martinez's gaze flickered between Reagan and me, assessing the palpable tension. I clenched my fists, forcing a semblance of calm, even as the betraying tremor in my hands threatened to give away the storm brewing beneath my composure. Officer Chen, her expression carefully neutral, turned to me. "Ma'am," she began, her voice professional, "can you explain the situation from your perspective?" I drew a shuddering, deep breath, tasting the metallic tang of anxiety on my tongue, and started. Meticulously, from the very beginning. I recounted the week I had committed to watching Lily, the horrifying discovery of her after her attempt, the agonizing hospital stay, and the conspicuous, almost calculated, absence of Reagan throughout it all. But every word of truth I uttered seemed to be a cue for Reagan to interject, like a venomous snake striking, twisting every single detail until it was unrecognizable. "She's exaggerating," Reagan cut in, her tone dismissive, a derisive wave of her hand accompanying the words. "Teenagers do these things for attention, you know? A cry for drama, nothing more," she continued, her voice gaining an indignant edge. "I had a pre-planned vacation, a non-refundable one, that I simply couldn't cancel. She's making it sound far worse than it ever truly was." The officers exchanged weary glances, a subtle shift in their posture betraying their discomfort with the conflicting narratives. Officer Martinez, perhaps seeking an impartial voice, then moved towards the quiet hallway, where Lily had retreated and locked herself in the bathroom. He knocked gently, his voice soft, almost paternal. "Lee," he called out, "this is Officer Martinez. Can you come out and talk to us for a moment?" A heavy, drawn-out silence hung in the air, thick with unspoken fears, until, after what felt like an eternity, we heard the distinct, metallic click of the lock. Lily emerged, her small face blotchy and crimson, her eyes swollen and puffy from the relentless torrent of tears. She refused to meet anyone's gaze, her eyes fixed steadfastly on the intricate patterns of the floor, as if seeking solace in its unyielding surface. Officer Chen, her voice a bomb of gentle concern, approached Lily. Lily, she said, her tone empathetic. Your mother says you need to come home with her. Is there any particular reason you don't want to go? Lily's slender shoulders visibly shook, a silent tremor echoing her internal turmoil. She opened her mouth, a desperate sound catching in her throat, only to close it again, unable to articulate the depth of her despair. Before she could attempt to speak once more, Reagan stepped forward, a predatory glint in her eyes. She's been manipulated, Reagan declared quickly, almost aggressively, painting herself as the wronged party. This woman, she gestured vaguely in my direction, has been filling her head with malicious lies about me being a bad mother. Of course, she's confused. She's just a child susceptible to suggestion. I watched, helpless, as Lily seemed to physically shrink, retreating further into herself, like a fragile bloom wilting under a harsh glare. The officers, clearly out of their depth and looking visibly uncomfortable, exchanged another uneasy glance. It was painfully clear they were unsure how to navigate this emotional minefield, without any concrete, undeniable evidence of abuse or an immediate, undeniable threat of danger. The cold hard truth of their protocol dictated that they were legally bound to side with a biological parent. Lily, Officer Martinez stated, his voice now imbued with a tone of regretful finality. I'm truly sorry, but legally, we must return you to your mother's custody. He paused, offering a platitude that felt hollow in the charged atmosphere. If there are indeed issues at home, there are proper channels and resources available to address them. Lily's head snapped up, her eyes wide with unadulterated panic, like a trapped animal suddenly realizing its fate. She looked at me, a desperate plea etched onto her features. But what, in that moment, could I possibly do? Reagan was her legal guardian, armed with the full authority of the law. The system, in its rigid adherence to protocols, was working precisely as Reagan had meticulously calculated it would. With a triumphant smirk, Reagan snatched Lily's backpack from where it sat passively by the door. Come on, Lily, she commanded, her voice sharp and uncompromising. We're going home now. Lily moved as if wading through unseen quicksand, each step heavy, reluctant, weighted with an invisible despair. At the threshold of the door, she paused, turning back to cast one last, lingering look in my direction. The raw, gut-wrenching devastation reflected in her eyes felt like a physical blow, making my chest ache with a searing, sympathetic pain. I'll check on you, I called out, my voice thick with a desperate, unfulfilled promise. But my words were brutally cut short by Reagan's sharp, derisive laugh, like a shard of glass shattering the fragile silence. I don't think so, she scoffed, her voice dripping with malice. You've done enough damage here. Stay away from my daughter. The officers, ever the impartial enforcers of the law, followed them out, ensuring the transfer of custody unfolded smoothly, a word that felt utterly incongruous with the scene. I remained rooted in my doorway, a silent, helpless witness, watching as Reagan virtually marched Lily towards her car. Lily, her movements strangely detached and mechanical, like a doll being manipulated, climbed into the passenger seat. Reagan, with an entirely unnecessary, aggressive force, slammed the door shut, the resounding thud echoing the finality of the moment. As their car pulled away, disappearing down the street, Officer Chen lingered on my porch for a moment longer. If you genuinely have concerns about the child's welfare, she said quietly, her voice almost a whisper, you can always contact Child Protective Services. And, she added, her eyes meeting mine with a flicker of genuine advice, document everything. Absolutely everything. I nodded numbly, the weight of her words settling heavily upon me. The house, once vibrant with Lily's youthful energy, now felt eerily quiet, permeated by an oppressive, desolate silence. Just then, Emma appeared silently at my side, her small figure emerging from the shadows of the stairs, having watched the entire heartbreaking tableau unfold. Mom, she asked, her voice barely a whisper, trembling with the child's raw fear. Is Lily going to be okay? I pulled her into a tight embrace, wishing, with every fiber of my being, that I had a comforting, definitive answer to offer. The very next morning, my phone began to buzz relentlessly, a cascade of texts from our mutual friends. Reagan, it became sickeningly clear, had already launched her calculated smear campaign, poisoning our shared social circle. The messages were a disorienting mix, ranging from genuine confusion to outright, stinging accusation. Reagan says you actually tried to steal her daughter. One friend texted, disbelief evident in the words. What's this absolutely crazy story about you refusing to let Lily go home? I simply can't believe you would overstep like that. I stared at my phone, the screen blurring through my disbelief, my mind reeling. Reagan had meticulously twisted the entire, agonizing story, masterfully painting herself as the ultimate victim and me as some deranged, obsessive woman attempting to abduct her own child. I desperately tried calling a few friends, hoping to explain, to offer my version of the truth, but it was already too late. They had all, without exception, heard Reagan's carefully crafted narrative first. Some listened politely, their responses laced with a palpable skepticism, while others didn't answer my calls at all, the silent rejections echoing louder than any shouted accusation. At work, the struggle to focus was immense, a constant, uphill battle against the churning anxiety. Every time my phone buzzed, a flicker of desperate hope ignited within me. Could it be Lily? Only to be extinguished by yet another friend questioning my actions or, worse, outright severing ties entirely. Reagan had been meticulously thorough, a social assassin, reaching out to every single person in our extensive social circle, ensuring no one remained untouched by her poisonous narrative. 3 days later, Emma returned home from school, her usual bubbly demeanor replaced by a visibly shaken, pale composure. She dropped her backpack with an uncharacteristic thud by the door and slumped onto the couch, her small frame looking utterly defeated. "What's wrong, sweetie?" I asked, my heart immediately seizing with a fresh wave of dread as I sat beside her. Emma bit her lip, her eyes wide with a fear that chilled me to the bone. "Lily's mom was at school today," she whispered. My blood ran instantly cold. "What do you mean, at school?" I pressed, my voice barely above a whisper. "She was waiting by my locker after last period," Emma explained, her voice trembling. "She told me I need to stay away from Lily. She said that you're a bad influence and that you're trying to break up their family." Emma's voice cracked, thick with etched hairs. "And then she said, if you try to talk to Lily, I'll make sure both of you get into serious trouble." A ferocious, protective rage bubbled up inside me, a hot, molten lava threatening to erupt. Reagan was now brazenly targeting my own daughter, deliberately trying to isolate Lily even from her closest, most cherished friend. My hand instinctively grabbed my phone, ready to call the school to confront this monstrous bullying, but Emma's small hand clasped mine, stopping me. "Mom, please," she pleaded, her voice choked with desperation. "It'll just make things so much worse. And besides," she added, her voice barely audible, "Lily wasn't even at school today or yesterday." That night, a cold knot of fear tightening in my stomach. I tried calling Lily's phone, repeatedly, but each attempt was met with the impersonal blip of her voicemail. I sent text after text, a torrent of frantic messages, only to see the dreaded undelivered notification for every single one. Reagan had clearly confiscated her phone, or perhaps, with her characteristic ruthlessness, simply blocked my number entirely. Twice that week, annoying desperation driving me, I drove past Reagan's house, hoping, praying, for just a fleeting glimpse of Lily. But the curtains remained perpetually drawn, like heavy eyelids sealing off a secret. Reagan's car was always in the driveway, a cold, unfeeling confirmation that they were indeed home. Yet the house itself looked lifeless, eerily devoid of any warmth or activity, a silent, impenetrable fortress. In a last, desperate gamble, a sliver of hope igniting in the pervasive gloom, I remembered that Reagan's mother lived across town. Perhaps she, Mrs. D. Patterson, a woman I had always gotten along well with, a grandmother surely, would be concerned about her own granddaughter's well-being. I called her on a Thursday evening, clutching the phone like a lifeline. She answered on the third ring, her voice initially warm and comfortingly familiar, like a soft blanket. "Mrs. Patterson," I began, my voice laced with urgency. "It's me. I desperately need to talk to you about Lily." The warmth in her voice vanished instantly, replaced by an icy, impenetrable coldness that sent a shiver down my spine. "I've already heard all about your behavior," she stated flatly, her tone devoid of any former affection. "Reagan told me everything. How you deliberately tried to turn Lily against her own mother. How you maliciously exaggerated what was merely a cry for attention into something serious, something truly sinister. That's not what happened," I protested, my voice rising with a frantic desperation, the injustice searing through me. "Lily was in the hospital for 3 harrowing days. She could have died." But Reagan's mother, unwavering, echoed her daughter's cutting words, her voice dripping with disdain. "Reagan said you're obsessed with her family and that," Mrs. Patterson had declared, "you've always been jealous of her having a daughter first." The accusation, sharp and unfounded, felt like a slap. Mrs. Patterson's voice, which had started with a weary exasperation, now grew harder, colder, like granite. "I think it's best if you leave my family alone." The finality of her tone was absolute, a door slamming shut. Then, with a click that echoed the severing of our connection, the line went dead. I sat there, the no-silent phone a dead weight in my trembling hand, feeling completely and utterly helpless. It was a despair so profound it felt physical, pressing down on my chest. How could one person, one manipulative individual, wield such destructive power over perceptions? Reagan had poisoned everyone against me, twisting truths into venomous lies, even turning her own mother into an unwitting accomplice in her campaign of isolation. The world felt smaller, colder, suffocating. 2 agonizing weeks crawled by with no word, no sign, no faint whisper from Lily. The silence from her was a heavy shroud, amplifying my growing dread. Emma, usually so vivacious, grew quieter, her youthful energy dimmed by a pervasive worrying. Her eyes, once bright, now constantly darted to her phone, a silent prayer etched on her face, hoping her friend might, by some miracle, find a way to reach out, a digital breadcrumb to follow. During this oppressive waiting period, I'd instinctively started documenting everything, every unsettling detail. A meticulous folder began to swell with screenshots of cryptic messages, official-looking text messages, and a painstakingly detailed timeline of events. It was a desperate attempt to impose order on the chaos, to gather proof for a battle I didn't yet know how to fight. But what good would all this evidence, this meticulous ledger of despair, actually do if I couldn't even check on Lily, if I couldn't even verify her safety? The question gnawed at me, a relentless torment. Then, on a Wednesday afternoon, the silence of the house was shattered. Emma burst through the door after school, a whirlwind of frantic energy, clutching a small, folded piece of paper as if it were a precious, fragile secret. Mom, she gasped, her voice breathless, her eyes wide with a mixture of fear and urgency. "I found this in my locker." She practically shoved the paper into my hands. My heart leapt into my throat. It was undeniably Lily's handwriting messy, the letters a desperate scrawl that spoke volumes about the haste and terror with which it had been penned. The words, barely legible, seemed to leap off the page. Emma, please give this to your mom. I need help. My mom took my phone and won't let me leave the house. She keeps saying I embarrassed her and ruined her vacation. She won't talk to me except to yell. I don't know what to do. Please help me. Don't let her know you have this. It was a desperate SOS, a fragile lifeline cast into a stormy sea, each word a testament to Lily's mounting despair. My hands, already trembling, now shook violently as I absorbed the devastating plea. A wave of protective fury, cold and sharp, washed over me. Emma, meanwhile, was already pulling out her phone, her fingers hovering over the screen. We have to help her, Emma declared, her voice cracking with raw emotion. Now. Maybe we can wait, I managed to say, thinking quickly, forcing my voice to be calm despite the maelstrom in my gut. We need to be smart about this. The gravity of the situation was immense. If Reagan finds out we're communicating with Lily, she'd make things even worse. She'd isolate her completely, perhaps even retaliate against us. The risks were too high for impulsive action. Immediately, I made several copies of the fragile note, adding it to my burgeoning folder of documentation. Each photocopy a further piece of evidence, a testament to Lily's silenced suffering. Then, carefully, meticulously, I had Emma write a response, keeping it simple, safe, and above all, helpful. We would find a way to help. I instructed her to write. She should stay strong, resilient in the face of her mother's cruelty. And, crucially, if there was an emergency, if her safety was ever truly jeopardized, she should call 911, a lifeline I hope she would never need to use. The next morning, Emma, with a furtive glance around, slipped the folded note into Lily's locker, a small act of defiance in the face of overwhelming oppression. For 3 excruciatingly long days, nothing happened. The silence stretched, taut and agonizing, testing our resolve. Had Reagan found the note? Had our attempt to connect only made things worse? The question swirled, suffocating. Then, another note appeared. This one was longer, the handwriting even more frantic, imbued with a palpable sense of desperation that seemed to cling to the paper. Lily described in harrowing detail how Reagan had become increasingly hostile, a psychological tormentor who alternated between ignoring her completely, treating her as if she were invisible, and then launching into vitriolic tirades about how Lily had single-handedly ruined her life, her vacation, her very existence. Lily wasn't eating properly, she confessed, her young body wilting under the strain. She wasn't sleeping, tormented by fear and anxiety. I felt like a prisoner in my own home. The note concluded, a chilling metaphor for her complete loss of freedom and autonomy. I knew then, with an icy certainty, that we had to act, and soon, but still, carefully, strategically. The stakes were too high for recklessness. I immediately contacted a family lawyer for advice, laying out my meticulously compiled documentation, the timestamps, the messages. Lily's increasingly desperate notes, a grim testament to Reagan's escalating abuse. He listened patiently, his expression grave, and suggested reaching out to Child Protective Services, CPS. However, he warned, his voice pinched with the frustration of legal limitations, that without clear evidence of physical abuse, without bruises or broken bones, such reports might not lead anywhere substantial. The system, designed to protect, often found itself constrained by the very evidence it required, leaving victims of psychological torment in a cruel legal limbo. Despite the legal hurdles, Emma continued her clandestine mission, passing notes back and forth, a fragile thread connecting to friends in a world that sought to sever them. Through these whispered exchanges, we learned the full extent of Reagan's insidious psychological warfare. She had told Lily that I'd abandoned her, that I didn't want her around anymore, deliberately twisting Lily's perception of love and loyalty. The psychological manipulation was heartbreaking to witness, a cruel attempt to sever Lily's last emotional lifelines, to isolate her completely from anyone who cared. It was a systematic dismantling of a child's trust and sense of belonging. Then, inevitably, fate, or perhaps just Reagan's inherent paranoia, intervened. Reagan discovered the notes. The moment of discovery was marked by Emma's arrival home from school on a Friday, her face white as a sheet, her eyes wide with unadulterated terror. She knows, Emma whispered, her voice barely audible, a fragile thread of sound. Reagan knows about the notes. My phone rang almost immediately, as if on cue. Reagan's number flashed on the screen, a menacing beacon. I answered, bracing myself for the inevitable storm, a knot of dread tightening in my stomach. You just can't stop, can you? Reagan's voice was low, dangerously calm, each word imbued with a chilling menace. I told you to stay away from my daughter. Reagan, I began, my voice attempting to project the calm I didn't feel. I'm just trying to make sure she's okay. Lily is reaching out for help. I'm filing a restraining order. She cut me off, her voice rising now, sharp and brittle like glass shattering. Against you and your daughter. This is harassment. This is an obsession. If either of you contact Lily again, if you so much as breathe in her direction, I'll have you arrested. You can't do that, I retorted, a surge of righteous indignation temporarily overriding my fear. We haven't done anything wrong. Watch me, she hissed, the venom in her voice so potent it made me shiver, a physical manifestation of her malice. It was a chilling promise. I've already talked to my lawyer. Stay away from my family, from my daughter, or you'll regret it for the rest of your life. And with that final, icy thread, she hung up. leaving a ringing silence and the bitter taste of fear in my mouth. Within days, the official papers were served. A thick envelope, cold and impersonal, landed on my doorstep, bringing with it the stark reality of Reagan's wrath. Reagan had indeed filed for a restraining order, claiming I was stalking and harassing her family, painting a picture of me as unhinged and obsessive. The accusations were wild, audacious fabrications, each one a grotesque distortion of the truth. She twisted every interaction, every desperate attempt to help Lily, into something sinister, a calculated act of malice. My lawyer, after reviewing the documents, confirmed that we could fight it, but he warned me of the brutal realities. It would take significant time, precious financial resources, and an emotional toll I could barely fathom. Meanwhile, the most heartbreaking truth persisted. Lily remained trapped, an invisible prisoner within her own home, her pleas for help effectively silenced by legal maneuvering. That's when a faint, almost forgotten memory resurfaced, a tiny flicker of hope in the overwhelming darkness. I remembered something Reagan had mentioned years ago, a throwaway comment about having a sister, Catherine, who she'd cut off contact with. Reagan had always been vague about the reasons why, merely dismissing it as a falling out, a petty sibling disagreement. But perhaps, I mused, the vagueness itself was a clue, suggesting something deeper, something darker. Maybe, just maybe, Catherine would be willing to help. It was a long shot, a desperate gamble, but I had to try. It took some determined digging, sifting through digital archives and social media profiles, but I finally found her. Catherine lived about 2 hours away, a geographical distance that mirrored the emotional chasm Reagan had created between them. Her profile showed a woman who looked strikingly like Reagan, the same bone structure, the same distinctive features, but with one profound difference. Catherine's eyes held a discernible kindness, a warmth that was entirely absent in Reagan's perpetually calculating gaze. I sent her a message, a carefully worded plea, not expecting much, bracing myself for silence or skepticism. To my profound surprise and relief, she responded within hours. I've been wondering when someone would finally see through Reagan's act. Her message read, a validation so powerful it brought tears to my eyes. Can we talk? We spoke on the phone that night, the conversation stretching long into the quiet hours. Catherine's story, as she unfolded it, was eerily, chillingly familiar. It was a narrative steeped in manipulation and control, a pattern that had begun not in adulthood, but in childhood. Reagan, Catherine recounted, had always been manipulative, even as a little girl, a psychological predator in miniature. Catherine had eventually distanced herself after Reagan had spread malicious lies about her to their unsuspecting family. Calculated fabrications that had nearly destroyed Catherine's relationship with their parents, leaving deep, festering wounds. I tried to warn people, Catherine said, her voice heavy with past pain, but Reagan's always been good at playing the victim. At turning herself into the wronged party while destroying others, a rhetorical question hung in the air. How could one person be so utterly devoid of empathy, so adept at emotional warfare? When I heard she finally had a daughter, Catherine continued, her voice softening with genuine sorrow. My heart broke for that little girl, knowing what she would eventually endure. I then told her everything, leaving no detail, no agonizing moment, unshared. And unlike everyone else, unlike Mrs. Patterson or the wary lawyer, Catherine believed me immediately, implicitly. She'd seen Reagan's patterns before. She understood the insidious nature of her sister's cruelty. This was not just a falling out, it was a deeply ingrained behavioral pathology. There's a family reunion next month, Catherine said, a glint of strategic thinking in her voice. Reagan will be there. She can't resist showing off to the family, presenting her perfect, curated life to everyone who will listen. Her words held a new, tantalizing possibility. If we time this right, if we coordinate our efforts, we can expose her in front of everyone. We can shatter her carefully constructed facade. It was a risky proposition, a high-stakes gamble that could either free Lily or plunge us deeper into Reagan's vindictive orbit. But as we both recognized, it might just be our only chance, our last desperate play. Catherine and I spent the next weeks in intense preparation, meticulously crafting our strategy. I organized all my documentation, each piece a silent accusation. The hospital records hinting at Reagan's neglect, the damning text messages showcasing her chilling indifference, and of course, Lily's desperate, heart-wrenching notes. Every document was a brick in the wall of truth we intended to build around Reagan's lies. Simultaneously, Catherine discreetly reached out to other family members whom Reagan had wronged over the years, carefully, slowly building a network of support, a quiet rebellion of truth-tellers. Each conversation was a delicate dance, convincing reluctant relatives to finally acknowledge the toxic patterns they had long ignored or dismissed. The reunion, our chosen battlefield, was held at their aunt's sprawling house on a sun-drenched Saturday afternoon, a veneer of idyllic family gathering cloaking the impending storm. Catherine, with her quiet determination, had convinced me to come as her plus one, an uninvited guest in Reagan's meticulously curated world. When we arrived, the air inside was thick with laughter and the hum of polite conversation. Reagan was already there, holding court in the living room, a picture of effortless charm, her laughter ringing out, her smile wide and seemingly genuine, chatting as if she didn't have a care in the world, as if she hadn't just systematically tormented her daughter and legally harassed me. She saw me first. The transformation was instantaneous and stark. Her face went utterly white, then flushed a violent, furious red, her eyes narrowing into dangerous slits. "What are you doing here?" she hissed, the words barely audible above the general din, as she abruptly stood up, her carefully constructed composure shattered. I invited her, Catherine said calmly, her voice steady and resolute, stepping deliberately beside me, a defiant act of solidarity. It's time everyone knew the truth about you, Reagan. The real truth. You have no right, Reagan began, her voice quivering with a mixture of rage and panic, her carefully constructed world teetering on the brink of collapse. Barely had the words started out before Catherine, with a sharp, decisive gesture, cut her off. Her voice, usually calm, was now laced with an undeniable steel. No, you have no right. You've hurt enough people, she declared, the last words heavy with the implication that Reagan had a long, damaging history of dismissing the concerns of others. Catherine then pivoted, her gaze sweeping across the stunned faces in the room, a diverse gathering of relatives whose expressions ranged from uncomfortable to openly curious. Everyone needs to hear what Reagan's been doing to her daughter, she announced, the gravity of her statement hanging thick in the air. This wasn't just a revelation, it was an indictment, a forced reckoning for a family that had perhaps looked away for too long. I felt a tremor in my own chest, my heart hammering a frantic rhythm against my ribs, yet my hands remained remarkably steady as I retrieved the folder from my bag. It felt substantial, weighty with the truth it contained, a silent testament to the months of meticulous collection. As I began to speak, my voice, though a little shaky at first, quickly found its strength, laying out the irrefutable evidence. The room, which had been buzzing with a low hum of nervous energy, slowly succumbed to an eerie, profound silence. It wasn't merely the absence of sound, it was a palpable void, a collective holding of breath, as if the air itself grew heavy with the unfolding narrative. Reagan, ever the performer, attempted to interrupt, a dismissive wave of her hand preceding her desperate effort to spin her own, fabricated version of events. But it was futile. The documentation, stark and unyielding, spoke for itself, each paper a brick in the wall of truth, leaving no room for her practiced deflections. These are lies, Reagan shrieked, her voice shrill and piercing. She's obsessed with my family. She tried to steal my daughter. Her accusations were a desperate, predictable tactic designed to ignite outrage and divert attention, painting me as a villain in her self-serving drama. Then explain this, I retorted, my voice calm but unwavering, holding up a printout. It was a chilling text message where she'd unequivocally stated that changing her flight plans was simply too expensive to return to her ailing child. And then, or this, I continued, presenting records of her callous calls to nurses and babysitters, filled with dismissive instructions and demands, treating her daughter's caregivers as mere inconveniences. And finally, this, I concluded, my voice softening as I held aloft a crumpled piece of paper Lily's desperate, heartbreaking note. Its very existence a silent scream. The room erupted. It wasn't a sudden explosion of noise, but a gradual, unstoppable wave of murmurs, gasps, and then, finally, impassioned voices. It was as if a dam had broken, releasing a torrent of long-suppressed frustrations and hurts. Family members, who had remained silent for so long, perhaps out of fear or a misguided sense of loyalty, now spoke up, their own experiences with Reagan's web of lies and manipulation pouring out. Her aunt, a woman usually reserved, spoke with a bitter edge about significant sums of money that had mysteriously gone missing under Reagan's watch. A cousin, her eyes still holding a flicker of pain, recounted the cruel, baseless rumors Reagan had meticulously spread about her, designed to isolate and undermine. Reagan's carefully constructed mask, meticulously maintained for years, finally slipped completely, revealing the raw, ugly anger beneath. You're all jealous, she screamed, her voice cracking with fury, her face contorting into a grotesque parody of rage. You've always been jealous of me and you, she accused, her finger trembling as it pointed directly at me. You wanted to steal Lily because you could never be the mother I am. Her words were a venomous cocktail of narcissism and delusion, each syllable designed to wound. Catherine, her earlier steel now tempered with a quiet, devastating calm, interjected. What kind of mother leaves her daughter dying in a hospital to stay on vacation? Her question hung heavy, a stark, agonizing contrast to Reagan's self-pitying tirade. She wasn't dying, Reagan shrieked, her denial a desperate, transparent attempt to rewrite history. She was being dramatic. She's always been dramatic, needing attention, ruining everything. The cruelty of her words was breathtaking, reducing her own child's profound suffering to a mere act of theatrical inconvenience. Do you know how hard it is having a daughter who won't just be grateful? Who makes everything about her pain and her problems? I needed that vacation. I deserved it after putting up with her for 15 years. Her voice carried not a hint of remorse, only a profound, chilling self-absorption. The room, which had been a cacophony of outrage, went completely silent once more. This silence was different, heavier, more suffocating, permeated by a collective horror. Reagan herself seemed to finally grasp the monstrosity of what she had just uttered, her face straining of all color, leaving her features stark and hollow. Did you just say? A voice, surprisingly steady yet trembling with profound disgust, cut through the stillness. It was their grandmother, speaking for the very first time, her eyes fixed on Reagan with an icy glare. That you resented your daughter for attempting to end her life? The grandmother's interpretation of Sewers cut like a knife, revealing the raw, devastating truth. Reagan tried desperately to backtrack, her mouth opening and closing like a fish out of water, but the damage was irreversible. The words were out, exposed in their raw, brutal truth. She had, in that unguarded moment of self-pity, finally shown everyone the true, monstrous depths of her callousness. The grandmother's words, charged with a lifetime of quiet observation and unspoken disappointment, hung in the air, a physical presence, weighty and inescapable. Reagan's mouth continued to work, but no sound escaped. For the first time since I'd known her, this master of manipulation, this queen of quick retorts and smooth deflections, was utterly, completely speechless. I didn't mean it like that. Reagan finally managed, her voice cracking, a pathetic attempt at salvaging her image. You're twisting my words. I was stressed, exhausted from dealing with your... Catherine, her eyes flashing, finished the sentence for her, a cold, hard edge to her voice. From dealing with that draining, difficult daughter of yours. The daughter you left in a hospital bed while you posted beach selfies, celebrating your freedom. Reagan's eyes darted frantically around the room, a desperate, wild animal searching for even a glimmer of an ally, a single sympathetic face, but she found none. Only expressions of profound disgust, disappointment, and revulsion met her gaze. Her uncle, a man of few words and immense integrity, slowly rose from his armchair, his weathered face set in a stern, unwavering line. Reagan, he said quietly, his voice carrying an authority that brooked no argument, I think you need to leave. And I think you need to seriously reconsider how you're treating that child. You can't kick me out. Reagan's voice rose to a screech once more, shrill and indignant. This is my family. You're all taking the word of this outsider over mine. She tried to play the victim, to rally them against me, the perceived interloper. We're taking the word of evidence, her cousin Sarah interjected, her voice steady and clear, unburdened by emotion. Those texts, Reagan. Your own words. Sarah's simple, undeniable statement landed like a hammer blow. Reagan whirled on me then, her face contorted with a pure, unadulterated rage that was terrifying to behold. This is all your fault, she shrieked, spittle flying from her lips. You poisoned them against me just like you poisoned Lily. Her accusation, baseless and vicious, was a desperate, final lashing out. Before I could even formulate a response, Reagan lunged forward, a blur of motion fueled by fury. Catherine, quick as a flash, stepped between us, but Reagan shoved past her with surprising force, her eyes fixed on my folder of documentation, clearly intending to destroy the evidence. Papers scattered across the polished floor like autumn leaves as we struggled, a chaotic flurry of desperate grabs and pushes. Someone screamed, a sharp, piercing sound that cut through the melee. Strong hands, her uncles and two cousins immediately pulled Reagan back, restraining her as she thrashed and fought like a cornered animal. Let me go, Reagan shrieked, her voice raw. That's my private information. She has no right. Stop, Reagan, Catherine commanded, her voice cutting through the pandemonium with a sharp, no-nonsense authority. You're only making this worse. Suddenly, as if a switch had been flipped, Reagan went completely limp, her body slumping. Then, just as abruptly, she began to sob, a torrent of theatrical tears. But even through my shock and the lingering adrenaline, I could clearly see the chilling calculation glinting in her eyes. The performance was a deliberate tactic. She was already planning her next strategic move, her mind racing. Fine, she sniffed, shrugging off the restraining hands with an air of aggrieved martyrdom. You want to believe her lies? Fine. But Lily is my daughter, mine, and none of you have any say in how I raise her. With that final, defiant declaration of ownership, she stormed out, slamming the door with such violent force that a framed picture clattered from the wall, crashing to the floor. The room remained steeped in a stunned, heavy silence for several long moments. Then, slowly, Reagan's grandmother, her face etched with sorrow, bent down to help me gather the scattered papers, each document a piece of the shattered truth. I'm sorry you had to go through this, she said softly, her voice thick with regret. We should have seen it sooner. What matters now is helping Lily, Catherine stated, her voice firm, pragmatic, and forward-looking. Reagan's going to retaliate. We need to be ready. Her words were a chilling premonition, a stark reminder of Reagan's vindictive nature. She was absolutely right. By the time I arrived home that evening, the quiet solitude of my house was immediately shattered by the incessant buzzing of my phone, which was already flooded with messages and overwhelming, undeniable sign of the storm that had broken. Reagan, true to Catherine's prediction, had gone absolutely nuclear on social media, launching a full-scale digital assault. She had meticulously crafted and posted a grotesquely twisted version of events, painting herself as the innocent victim of a vicious ambush by her entire family, a narrative where I, the cunning puppeteer, had manipulated them all against her. To maximize the damage, she had tagged mutual friends, former coworkers, and even parents from our children's school, dragging an unsuspecting audience into her fabricated drama. Emma, my daughter, met me at the door, her face pale, her eyes wide with a mixture of fear and disbelief. Mom, she whispered, her voice barely audible. It's all over Instagram. Everyone's talking about it. I took her phone, my heart plummeting to my stomach as I scrolled through the carefully curated posts. Reagan had strategically unearthed and shared photos from happier timeshare and Lily smiling, seemingly blissful, at birthday parties, on family vacations, at school events. The captions, crafted with a master manipulator's touch, painted her as a devoted, loving mother being cruelly torn from her precious child by jealous, vindictive relatives, and a spiteful, interfering friend. The comments, Emma said quietly, her voice trembling. Look at the comments. I scrolled further, a sickening wave washing over me. People who, of course, knew absolutely nothing of the full, agonizing story were rallying fiercely to Reagan's defense. They were calling me unspeakable names, hurling vitriolic accusations, and demanding that I be arrested for harassment. Some even went so far as to suggest, in their uninformed outrage, that I was the very reason Lily had attempted to end her life, that I had filled her head with negativity and poison about her own mother. The venom was palpable, the accusations like daggers. Just then, my phone rang, its insistent vibration startling me. It was Catherine. Have you seen what she's doing? She demanded without preamble, her voice tight with a furious, controlled anger. I'm looking at it now, I replied, my voice raspy. She's already called my workplace, Catherine continued, each word clipped and sharp. Told them I'm unstable, that I physically attacked her at a family gathering. My boss wants to see me Monday morning. Catherine's voice was a tight wire, stretched to its breaking point, but refusing to snap. This is what she does, she said, her voice dropping to a chilling, resolute whisper. She destroys anyone who challenges her. That night, sleep was an elusive phantom. Every time I closed my eyes, Lily's desperate, pleading face appeared in the darkness, superimposed over the image of Reagan dragging her away, a chilling tableau of helplessness. Where was she now? Was she safe? The night questions echoed in the silent, suffocating darkness of my room. The next morning, however, brought a fresh, insidious form of hell. A process server, his face impassive, knocked on my door, delivering a thick stack of legal papers. Reagan wasn't just no longer considering filing a restraining order ourselves. Instead, the legal gauntlet had been thrown squarely at my feet. She wasn't just attempting to silence me, she was actively prosecuting me. Reagan was suing me for defamation, for the emotional distress she claimed I had inflicted, and for interference with her convoluted rental rights. The sheer, astronomical dollar amount listed in the lawsuit made my head spin, a dizzying figure that could cripple anyone, let alone an ordinary individual. That very afternoon, my lawyer, a man whose usual calm demeanor was a fortress, reviewed the papers. His expression was grim, a mask carved from granite. His brow furrowed so deeply it looked like a permanent scar. He sighed, adjusting his glasses. She's throwing everything at the wall to see what sticks, he explained, the words heavy with legal cynicism. Most of this, frankly, won't hold up in court. The claims are tenuous, bordering on absurd. But he added, his gaze meeting mine, defending against it, proving its absurdity will be astronomically expensive and excruciatingly time-consuming. I don't care about the money, I declared, my voice a raw whisper, the truth of it aching in my chest. I care about Lily. That's all that matters. He nodded slowly. I understand, he said, his voice tinged with a weariness I knew mirrored my own. But Reagan knows that. She's not just aiming for a legal victory. She's trying to bleed you dry, to drain your resources. Her ultimate goal is to make you back down, to exhaust you into surrender, so she can continue to control Lily unimpeded. Emma had been unusually quiet all weekend, a small, pensive shadow flitting through the house, the weight of the situation clearly pressing on her young shoulders. But come Monday morning, a fierce resolve had ignited in her eyes. She approached me, her posture suddenly straighter, her gaze unwavering. I want to go to the school counselor, she stated, her voice steady. Tell them about Lily, maybe they can actually do something beyond what we've been able to. My heart blenched with a familiar blend of love and fear. Emma, honey, Reagan might come after you, too. This isn't just about me anymore, she's escalating, casting a wider net. I don't care, she shot back, her voice startlingly fierce, like a tiny lioness defending her cub. Lily is my best friend, I can't just do nothing, Mom, I simply can't. As I drove her to school that morning, a profound sense of pride swelled within me, battling fiercely with the icy grip of terror. Proud of her courage, her unwavering loyalty. Terrified of the potential repercussions from a woman as vindictive as Reagan. But when we arrived, a new, unsettling development awaited us. The principal, Ms. Albright, was standing in the parking lot, her silhouette stark against the morning sun, almost as if she had been expecting us. I need to speak with you, she said, her expression carefully neutral, a practiced mask that betrayed nothing yet implied everything. There's been a complaint. My stomach dropped. Reagan had beaten us to it. She'd clearly gotten wind of Emma's intentions, or perhaps she simply anticipated our next move. She had called the school, weaving a tangled web of accusations, that I was actively encouraging Emma to spread malicious lies about her family, that I was shamefully using my own daughter to harass hers. The principal, caught between policy and a volatile parent, couldn't outright ban me from school property, but she strongly, almost urgently, suggested I refrain from any involvement in school matters regarding Lily. The message was clear. Stay away, or face further repercussions. Emma, bless her brave heart, went to class, but she texted me at lunch, a single, disheartening message. The counselor, she reported, had explained that her hands were tied, bound by bureaucratic red tape without direct, undeniable evidence of abuse. And Lily? Lily hadn't been to school in over a week now, a glaring absence that Reagan had skillfully covered with a series of doctor's notes, all claiming Lily was simply ill. The walls were closing in, tighter than ever. That afternoon, I found myself sitting in my car, parked just outside the school grounds, a heavy cloak of helplessness settling over me. The afternoon sun, usually a source of comfort, felt oppressive. Then, I spotted a familiar car in the parking lot, gleaming under the harsh light, Reagan's unmistakable vehicle. She was here, undoubtedly spinning more elaborate lies, tightening her insidious web of control around everyone, from the principal to Lily herself. I was about to resign myself to the day's fresh defeat and leave when I saw her exit the building, but she wasn't alone. A man walked beside her, tall and impeccably well-dressed, his presence radiating an air of serious professionalism. He carried a sleek, leather briefcase, a silent indicator of his purpose. They stopped beside her car, their heads closed, talking intently. Reagan gestured animatedly, her hand slicing through the air as she spoke, occasionally bringing a tissue to dab delicately at her eyes of performance. I instinctively knew. Designed for maximum emotional impact. Acting on a desperate impulse, I grabbed my phone, zoomed in as much as I possibly could, and snapped a flurry of photos, hoping to capture some tangible proof of this clandestine meeting. The man then handed Reagan a stack of papers, which she signed with a flourish. They shook hands, a formal, decisive gesture, and he departed in a separate, equally professional-looking car. Later that evening, fueled by a faint glimmer of hope, I enlisted Catherine's digital sleuthing skills. Through some incredibly careful and persistent social media searching, she managed to identify him. He was a high-powered family lawyer, a formidable legal shark known notoriously for his aggressive handling of complex custody battles and the ruthless procurement of restraining orders. The implications were chillingly clear. Reagan was escalating, not just emotionally, but legally, preparing for an all-out war. The next few days blurred together into an indistinguishable haze of anxiety and exhaustion. Reagan's relentless social media campaign continued, her carefully curated narrative flooding my feeds and poisoning public opinion. She posted old, idyllic videos of Lily as a seemingly happy, carefree child, juxtaposed with saccharine captions about how she was fighting tirelessly to save her beloved daughter from toxic influences. Support, a tidal wave of it, poured in from people who knew only her meticulously crafted version of events, utterly oblivious to the dark reality lurking beneath the surface. Meanwhile, my own lawyer's escalating fees were costing me a fortune, bleeding my savings dry. My boss, initially understanding about my frequent time off, was now growing perceptibly impatient, his patience wearing thin as my focus understandably wavered. And worst of all, the agonizing silence from Lily persisted. There was still no word, no sign of her well-being. The lack of information was a constant, gnawing pain. Then, one evening, a small crack of light appeared in the suffocating darkness. Mom, Emma burst into my room, her eyes wide with a mixture of excitement and urgency, clutching her phone like a precious artifact. I found Lily's old Instagram account. The one she used to use just for her art. She thrust the screen towards me. The account, a digital relic of a happier time, had been dormant for months, a silent testament to Lily's forced isolation. But suddenly, there it was, a brand new post. A simple, stark black square with 3 words in white text. I'm not okay. The breath caught in my throat. It had only been up for less than an hour. As we watched, spellbound and horrified, the post simply vanished, disappearing into the digital ether. She's trying to reach out, Emma whispered, her voice trembling, the realization dawning on her. Reagan must have found it and deleted it. She checks everything, Mom. We immediately screenshotted everything we could, frantically capturing the fleeting evidence of Lily's desperate cry. We added it to our growing, yet seemingly insufficient, pile of digital proof. But it felt like trying to build a precarious house of cards in the middle of a hurricane. Every tentative move we made, every small step forward, Reagan countered with 2 of her own, stronger and more destructive. The next call came from Catherine, bringing yet more bad news, a chilling testament to Reagan's escalating war. 3 more family members have received threatening letters from Reagan's lawyer, she reported, her voice tight with disbelief and anger. She's claiming the entire family conspired against her at the reunion, orchestrating some elaborate scheme. My elderly aunt, a gentlewoman of 72, was now utterly terrified, facing the daunting prospect of a lawsuit. This is insane, I exclaimed, the words bursting out of me in a torrent of frustration. How can she possibly get away with this? How does the system allow it? Because she knows most people will back down rather than fight, Catherine explained, her voice hardening with grim realism. Legal battles are not only financially ruinous but emotionally exhausting. She is counting on wearing us all down, grinding us into submission with sheer attrition. But backing down, I knew with every fiber of my being, meant abandoning Lily entirely. Consigning her to an existence under Reagan's tyrannical thumb. That simply wasn't an option. A new strategy began to form in my mind, born of desperation and a renewed sense of purpose. If Reagan was monitoring all of Lily's online activities with such frightening diligence, then perhaps we needed to communicate another way, off the digital grid. I remembered Lily mentioning a friend from her art class, a girl named Mia, whom Reagan didn't know well, a potential blind spot in her pervasive surveillance. Emma, with her innate sensitivity and quick thinking, reached out to Mia carefully, explaining the dire situation in hushed tones. Mia was horrified by the revelations but, to our immense relief, eager to help. She agreed to try to pass a message to Lily if she happened to see her, a tiny flicker of hope in the vast darkness. Days stretched into an eternity of agonizing silence, each one amplifying our anxiety. Then, on a Thursday afternoon, Emma's phone buzzed with a text from Mia. My heart leapt into my throat. Mia had seen Lily at the grocery store, no less, with Reagan. Her report was heartbreaking. Lily looked shockingly thin, utterly exhausted, her usual spark extinguished. She wouldn't make eye contact, her gaze fixed rigidly on the floor, a stark image of despair. When Reagan, ever the controlling warden, went to another aisle, Mia seized the precious, fleeting moment. She approached Lily quickly, whispering her name. Lily, Mia reported, immediately burst into tears, her defenses crumbling. Through choked sobs, she confessed the horrifying reality of her confinement. Her mom checked everything: her phone, her computer, even her school assignments. She wasn't allowed to leave the house except for errands with Reagan, a prisoner in her own home. She wanted me to tell you, Mia relayed, her words a poignant echo of Lily's pain, that she's trying to hang on. The message was a devastating blow, tearing at my soul, yet paradoxically, it was also profoundly galvanizing, like an electric current jolting me back to life. Lily was still fighting, clinging to hope with every fiber of her being. And if she was fighting, then we too had to keep fighting with renewed vigor and unwavering determination, fueled by her desperate courage. That same weekend, Catherine, our tireless researcher, unearthed something truly interesting, a pivotal piece of the puzzle. While delving deeper into Reagan's convoluted history, she stumbled upon court records from another state entirely. It was a cold case from 15 years ago, long before Lily was even born, but the details were eerily familiar. Reagan had been embroiled in a strikingly similar situation with a former roommate. Accusations of harassment, the aggressive pursuit of restraining orders, the filing of frivolous lawsuits, the pattern, like a dark, indelible stain, was absolutely identical. She's done this before, Catherine stated, her voice tight with revelation. The roommate, a woman named Jessica, eventually dropped everything. She was so terrified and exhausted that she simply moved away, vanished to escape Reagan's torment. But Catherine added, a triumphant glint in her eye, I tracked her down, and she's willing to talk. The former roommate, Jessica, told a chilling, almost identical story during a video call, her voice still trembling with residual trauma from so many years ago. Reagan, she recounted, had seemed absolutely perfect at first, charming, fun, incredibly generous, a seemingly ideal friend. But when Jessica started dating someone Reagan subtly disapproved of, everything changed, transforming into a nightmarish ordeal. The insidious manipulation, the calculated lies, the relentless legal threats, it all sounded horrifyingly familiar, a mirror image of my current living nightmare. I spent thousands in legal fees, Jessica said, her voice cracking, lost. Friends who, tragically, bought into her carefully constructed narratives, turning their backs on me. In the end, overwhelmed and utterly defeated, I simply ran. It wasn't a choice, it was a desperate escape, a flight from an untenable reality. I started completely over, a blank slate in a new city, trying to outrun the ghosts of that past. Even after all these years, a persistent ache of doubt lingered within me, a quiet whisper that questioned if I should have fought harder, clawed my way through the injustice. But then, I was barely an adult, just a frightened young woman, paralyzed by the sheer terror of what I was up against. Would you be willing to provide a statement for our case? I asked Jessica, my voice laced with a fragile hope that felt almost audacious after so long. She paused, her gaze distant, lost in memories that mirrored my own pain. Then, with a slow, deliberate movement, she finally nodded, a silent commitment etched on her face. I've regretted running for years, she confessed, her voice thick with unexpressed emotion. Leaving everything behind, it haunted me. Maybe this is my chance, truly, to make it right. Her words felt like a beacon, a small but vital flicker of solidarity in the encroaching darkness. We were meticulously building our case, brick by painstaking brick, a slow but resolute endeavor. Yet, Reagan, ever the puppet master, was far from idle. Her insidious machinations were already in motion, casting long, menacing shadows over our fragile progress. The very next Monday, the calm was shattered. Emma came home from school, her small frame trembling, face streaked with bitter tears. Someone, with chilling intent, had spray-painted LIR in harsh, unforgiving letters across her locker, a public declaration of psychological warfare. And, as if orchestrated by an unseen hand, the school's security footage, the very eyes meant to protect, conveniently showed nothing. That particular camera had, quite mysteriously, suffered a malfunction over the weekend, a glitch that felt too precise, too perfectly timed to be mere coincidence. The attacks escalated. My car tires were savagely slashed while I was inside a bustling grocery store, a mundane errand transformed into a chilling violation. Again, no witnesses, no conveniently placed cameras covering that isolated section of the parking lot. She's trying to intimidate us, my lawyer stated, his voice tight with frustration, but without concrete, irrefutable proof directly linking these acts to her. Our hands are tied. The insidious nature of it was designed to leave us feeling helpless, trapped in a web of unprovable suspicion. Catherine, my unwavering friend and ally, soon found herself facing her own torrent of harassment. Her workplace was besieged by relentless, anonymous calls, each laden with fabricated complaints, threatening her professional standing. Morbidly, a grim bouquet of dead, decaying flowers was left on her doorstep, a chilling, silent threat. Her social media, once a space for connection, was utterly deluged with hateful, vitriolic messages spewed from an army of seemingly endless fake accounts. A digital onslaught designed to isolate and break her. But the true nadir, the lowest point in this escalating nightmare, came with a sudden, gut-wrenching knock on my door. Child Protective Services. My blood ran cold, a wave of icy dread washing over me. We received a complaint. The social worker explained, her tone professionally neutral, yet the words she spoke landed like heavy blows. Allegations that you're emotionally abusing your daughter, Emma, forcing her to participate in harassing another family. The accusations hung in the air, a poisonous, twisted fabrication. I felt the blood literally drain from my face, leaving me a pallid, breathless shell. Reagan, with chilling precision, was now trying to turn the tables, not just attacking me, but weaponizing my very motherhood, attempting to paint me as an unfit, abusive parent. The social worker, her expression unreadable, interviewed Emma privately, behind a closed door that felt like a barrier to my very soul. I waited, every second an eternity, my hands trembling uncontrollably, my heart a frantic drum against my ribs. When they finally emerged, Emma's eyes were visibly red-rimmed, remnants of tear shed, but her chin was raised, a defiant, unwavering beacon of strength. Your daughter is remarkably articulate, the social worker observed, her voice imbued with genuine respect, and incredibly clear about what's been happening. We'll certainly need to follow up, as is procedure, but I don't see any immediate concerns for her safety. A wave of profound relief, thick and almost overwhelming, washed over me. Once the social worker had departed, Emma rushed into my arms, hugging me with a fierce, unwavering grip that conveyed all the unspoken terror she'd endured. I told her everything, Mom, she whispered, her voice still a little shaky. About Lily, about Reagan, every single detail. You did great, honey, I choked out, tears stinging my own eyes. I'm so incredibly proud of you. Yet, even amidst the relief, Reagan's latest, most heinous attack had shaken me to my core. She was willing to weaponize the very systems designed to protect innocent children, twisting them into instruments of her malice. A terrifying question echoed in the cavern of my mind. How far, exactly, would she go? What unspeakable depths was she prepared to plumb? The chilling answer arrived just 2 days later. As I was leaving work, the mundane routine of my day was abruptly shattered by a creeping sense of unease. I noticed a car, an innocuous dark sedan, subtly following me. It maintained a discreet distance, several vehicles back, but with an unnerving precision, it mirrored every single turn one made. My heart began to pound, a frantic drumbeat of terror against my ribs. Instead of heading home, where Emma might be waiting, I instinctively veered towards the safety of the police station. As if a phantom, the tailing car vanished into the urban sprawl. When I finally reached home, my nerves frayed, Emma was already there, her face a stark reflection of Catherine's grim expression. Lily's in the hospital, Catherine announced, her voice heavy with a grim resignation. Reagan posted about it, of course. She's claiming Lily had another attention-seeking episode and, predictably, blames us for triggering it. The news hit me with the force of a physical blow. My legs, suddenly devoid of strength, buckled beneath me, and I sank into the nearest chair, breath catching in my throat. Is she okay? I managed to rasp, the question torn from the deepest part of my soul. Catherine shook her head, a look of profound helplessness in her eyes. We don't know. Reagan's posting just enough carefully curated details to garner public sympathy to play the heartbroken victim, but absolutely nothing that truly explains what actually happened. We had desperately tried calling the hospital, only to be met by a wall of frustrating bureaucracy. Privacy laws, they regretfully explained, meant they couldn't divulge any information. Reagan, with her calculated foresight, had undoubtedly ensured we weren't on any authorized contact lists. We have to do something, Emma pleaded, her voice edged with desperation, her hands clenched into tight fists. We can't just let her keep Lily isolated and vulnerable like this. Just then, Catherine's phone buzzed, vibrating insistently. She glanced at the screen, her eyes widening perceptibly. It's my cousin, she exclaimed, a flicker of hope igniting in the pervasive gloom. She works in administration at the hospital. She can't give us specific details, citing HIPAA, but she says we should come. Now, with a sudden surge of adrenaline, we raced to the hospital, my mind a dizzying maelstrom of worst-case scenarios. What unspeakable thing had transpired? Was Lily truly okay? Or was this another dark chapter in Reagan's cruel narrative? At the hospital, Catherine's cousin, a woman with a sympathetic but guarded expression, met us in the bustling lobby. She reiterated that while she couldn't, under any circumstances, violate HIPAA laws and reveal specifics, she could confirm that Lily had indeed been admitted for a mental health evaluation. She also confirmed that Reagan was, at that very moment, meeting with the attending doctors. We settled into the sterile and comfortable lobby chairs, an unyielding resolve cementing us to the spot, utterly unwilling to leave. Minutes bled into hours, each ticking second an agonizing eternity. Then, with an unexpectedness that startled us, a doctor approached our small group. Are you Lily's family? He inquired, his gaze sweeping over us. I'm her aunt, Catherine quickly interjected, her voice firm. And this is a close family friend. The doctor's expression was troubled, a visible conflict playing across his features. I truly shouldn't be speaking with you, he began, lowering his voice conspiratorially, but that young lady she specifically asked me to. She's been quite insistent, unequivocally stating that her mother is lying about what happened. My heart leapt into my throat, a sudden, desperate surge of hope. Is she okay? I breathed, my voice barely a whisper. Physically, yes, he confirmed, offering a small, reassuring nod. But she's made some very serious allegations about her home situation, details that necessitate a thorough investigation on our part. We are, in fact, required to investigate. However, her mother she is incredibly resistant to our concerns, actively obstructing our inquiries. Before he could elaborate further, a furious, almost guttural shriek pierced the air. Reagan appeared around the corner, her face a mask of pure, unadulterated rage, her features contorted with a venomous fury upon seeing us. Get out, she screamed, her voice echoing through the normally hushed hospital corridor, instantly drawing startled glances. Get away from my daughter, security, someone get security. The doctor, remarkably composed, attempted to de-escalate the volatile situation. "Ma'am, please calm down," he urged, his voice steady. "Your daughter has specifically asked my daughter is mentally ill." Reagan shrieked, cutting him off, her voice cracking with a chilling blend of hysteria and self-pity. "These people, they have driven her to this. They're the sole reason she's even here." Security personnel, looking visibly uncertain and uncomfortable, quickly arrived on the scene. The grim reality of the situation was laid bare. Reagan was Lily's legal guardian, a fact that stripped us of any official right to be there, rendering us powerless. As we were regretfully, yet firmly, escorted out of the hospital, I overheard the doctor, his voice hushed but firm, say quietly to Reagan, "We'll need to involve social services. Your daughter's allegations are extremely serious." Reagan's response was a venomous hiss, dripping with malice and threat. "You'll be hearing from my lawyer within the hour." How dare you believe a disturbed, manipulative teenager over her own mother? In the cold, sterile expanse of the parking lot, we regrouped, the weight of the confrontation settling heavily upon us. This, we all knew, was a definitive turning point. Lily, with incredible courage, had spoken up, her voice finally heard by medical professionals who were legally obligated to act. There would now be an official record, an undeniable paper trail of her allegations. "Reagan's going to go scorched earth," Catherine predicted grimly, her eyes narrowed with a chilling certainty. "We need to be ready for the absolute worst." She was tragically right. Within a mere few hours, Reagan had launched into a rambling, incoherent social media manifesto, a desperate, public unraveling. Her posts railed against the hospital, accusing them of conspiring to steal her daughter, weaving elaborate tales of jealousy and dark conspiracies against their unbreakable bond. In a defiant, reckless move, she announced her intention to pull Lily out of the hospital against all medical advice. My lawyer's call came within minutes, his voice surprisingly calm amidst the escalating chaos. "This is actually good for us," he stated, a note of pragmatic strategy in his tone. "She's overtly demonstrating profound instability. Keep documenting absolutely everything." But my mind wasn't occupied with legal strategies or evidentiary procedures. My thoughts, my entire being, were consumed by Lily, trapped, isolated, with an increasingly volatile and unstable Reagan. That night, sleep a cruel, elusive dream, I found myself inexplicably driving past Reagan's house. The lights were on, casting an eerie glow, and I could discern indistinct shadows moving frantically behind the curtains, their forms indistinct, unsettling. Was Lily okay? Was she safe inside those walls? Or was she in even greater peril? As I sat there, a prisoner to my mounting anxieties, my phone suddenly buzzed, a jarring sound in the quiet darkness. A text message from an unknown number. "She's taking me away, I don't know where. Please don't stop fighting for me." All my blood ran cold, turning to ice in my veins. Without a moment's hesitation, I immediately forwarded the terrifying message to my lawyer and Catherine. If Reagan was planning to abscond with Lily, to vanish into the night, then I immediately called the police, but the authorities, bound by strict protocols and the stark absence of tangible evidence of immediate harm, had regretfully informed us there was little they could do. Their hands were tied by legal frameworks, unable to intervene unless imminent danger was unequivocally proven a frustratingly high bar when dealing with psychological manipulation. Reagan, armed with full legal custody, possessed the undeniable right to travel freely with her daughter, Lily, making any preventative measures seemingly insurmountable under current laws. The dawn broke with a chilling silence. By the next morning's first light, an ominous emptiness had settled over Reagan's house. The windows, once a portal to potential normalcy, now stared out like vacant eyes. Her car, the familiar silver sedan, was conspicuously absent from the driveway, leaving behind only an unsettling void. Whispers from attentive neighbors quickly coalesced into a disturbing narrative. They had witnessed Reagan, under the cloak of deepest night, furtively loading a perplexing number of suitcases into her vehicle, her movements urgent and clandestine. A stark realization etched itself onto Catherine's face. "She's running," Catherine declared, her voice laced with grim certainty, the words hanging heavy in the air. "She knows the walls are finally closing in on her elaborate charade. Doesn't she?" The rhetorical question didn't need an answer. The urgency in her tone spoke volumes about the mounting pressure Reagan must have felt. Our response was instantaneous, a whirlwind of frantic, coordinated action as the gravity of the situation fully dawned upon us. Catherine, with a focused intensity, became the linchpin, meticulously contacting every single family member, from distant cousins to close aunts, imploring them to become vigilant lookouts for any sign of Reagan or Lily, effectively establishing a wide-ranging, informal search network. Simultaneously, I reached out to Lily's school, providing them with the disquieting details of her sudden disappearance, hoping their institutional reach might offer some unforeseen avenue of discovery, or at least prevent any potential return unnoticed. My dedicated lawyer, understanding the critical nature of the moment, immediately initiated emergency legal proceedings, seeking a court-ordered welfare check, a crucial step to legally compel authorities to locate and assess Lily's safety, cutting through the red tape that had previously hindered us. Meanwhile, Emma was utterly distraught, her emotional turmoil palpable. Her voice, choked with rising panic, echoed the fears gnawing at our collective hearts. What if we never find them? What if Reagan, in her increasingly erratic state, actually hurts Lily, despite the profound uncertainty? I met her desperate gaze with a promise I prayed with every fiber of my being would prove true. "We'll find them, Emma." We absolutely will. The words were meant to reassure her. Yet inwardly, a desperate plea for that reassurance to materialize echoed in my own anxious thoughts. Then, a glimmer of hope pierced through the suffocating cloud of anxiety, emerging from the most unexpected of sources, proving that sometimes salvation arrives disguised in the mundane. The observant grocery store clerk, who had previously encountered Lily alongside Reagan during a routine shopping trip, remembered Emma's friend, Mia, and instinctually reached out to her. A seemingly small connection that would prove monumental. During that crucial phone call, the clerk had distinctly overheard Reagan making arrangements for a rental cabin, a secluded retreat located approximately 2 hours north of our current position. The detail, though seemingly minor, resonated with unsettling implications. It was far from a complete picture, a mere breadcrumb in a vast wilderness of unknowns, but it was more than we'd had in days, a concrete, actionable lead. A fragile thread that could potentially unravel Reagan's carefully woven escape plan. Catherine and I, driven by a mixture of apprehension and renewed determination, quickly agreed to make the drive ourselves, not to confront, but simply to verify Lily's presence. Our mission was narrowly defined and critically important. We meticulously planned to exercise extreme caution, ensuring we wouldn't, under any circumstances, inadvertently violate the existing restraining orders. Our sole objective was to gather irrefutable confirmation of their location, information we could then unequivocally present to the authorities, empowering them to act decisively. The rental cabin proved to be as remote as anticipated, a solitary structure nestled deep within a dense, whispering forest, its isolation intensifying the sense of foreboding that already gripped us. And there it was, Reagan's familiar car, undeniably parked outside the cabin, a silent, yet powerful confirmation of the lead's veracity. Maintaining a discreet, safe distance, we positioned ourselves to observe, our hearts drumming with a nervous rhythm. After what felt like an eternity of agonizing stillness, a flicker of movement caught my eye in one of the cabin's small windows. It was Lily. Her small face, etched with a profound sadness, peered out. In that suspended moment, our gazes locked across the significant expanse, separating us, a silent, desperate communication passing between us. Then, in an act of heartbreaking bravery, she pressed her tiny palm flat against the cold glass, a silent plea for connection, and I distinctly saw her lips form the single, profound word, help. The fragile moment was shattered as Reagan's shadow abruptly loomed, her hand brutally yanking Lily away from the window, as if severing a lifeline. The curtain, with an unsettling snap, was violently pulled shut, plunging the scene back into an opaque mystery. We have to call the police, Catherine breathed, her voice a fierce whisper, urgency blazing in her eyes. Now, before another second passes, but before my fingers could even fully grasp my phone, the cabin's front door exploded open with an alarming force, violently disrupting the silence. Reagan stood framed in the doorway, her eyes wide and feral, reflecting an unsettling madness. In her tightly clenched hand, something metallic glinted ominously, catching the faint light, a chilling detail that sent a fresh wave of terror through me. I knew you'd come, she shrieked, her voice raw and filled with a disturbing triumph, piercing the quiet woods. I knew you couldn't leave us alone, could you? Didn't you understand that? Her accusations, tinged with paranoia, echoed around the isolated clearing. As she began to stalk towards us, her movements deliberate and menacing, a primal instinct for self-preservation kicked in. We scrambled, fumbling with desperate urgency, back into the perceived safety of our car, our escape feeling like a narrow reprieve. Fleeing the scene, I immediately dialed 911, my voice trembling, but my message clear and urgent. I recounted the harrowing situation, detailing Reagan's alarming, unstable behavior and articulating our profound fears for Lily's immediate safety, emphasizing the glinting object in Reagan's hand. The dispatcher's calm, professional voice cut through my panic, assuring me that emergency units were swiftly being dispatched to our location, a promise that offered a fragile lifeline of hope. We retreated to a discreet but safe distance, our eyes glued to the winding road, the minutes stretching into an eternity of anxious anticipation until, finally, the flashing blue and red lights of multiple police cruisers cut through the dappled light of the woods. Two uniformed officers, their figures appearing resolute and authoritative, cautiously approached the cabin. We watched, transfixed, our hearts hammering against our ribs like frantic drums, every beat echoing our profound hope and fear. Reagan, with her characteristic hyper-awareness, must have spotted their arrival, for she emerged from the cabin moments later. She appeared with Lily, her hand clamped around her daughter's arm with a possessive, almost vice-like grip, a stark visual representation of her suffocating control. Even from our vantage point, the distance couldn't obscure Reagan's theatrically animated gestures, her body language already launching into what we knew, with disheartening certainty, was another elaborate, self-serving narrative designed to manipulate and mislead. But then, in a moment that solidified her incredible strength, Lily, empowered by a hidden reservoir of courage, performed an act of profound defiance. With a sudden, forceful tug, she wrenched her arm free from Reagan's grasp and sprinted towards the officers, her small hands gesturing frantically. A silent scream for help finally finding its visual voice. Reagan lunged, a desperate attempt to reclaim her captive, but one of the officers, swift and decisive, instantly stepped between them, forming an unyielding barrier that finally separated mother and daughter. The ensuing conversation between Lily, the officers, and Reagan stretched on, unfolding in an agonizingly slow motion that distorted time, making mere minutes feel like interminable hours under the oppressive weight of our anxiety. As the situation deepened, more police units arrived, their presence underscoring the gravity of Lily's revelations. Soon after, an ambulance materialized, its arrival a stark reminder of the potential trauma Lily had endured. Finally, after what felt like an eternity suspended between hope and dread, one of the officers detached himself from the scene and walked purposefully towards our car, his measured steps feeling like the slow approach of destiny. "The young lady," he began, his tone grave, "has made some serious and concerning allegations. Consequently, we are immediately taking her for a comprehensive medical evaluation to ensure her physical well-being. And we've initiated emergency involvement with Child Protective Services CPS given the critical nature of her disclosures," he added, with a subtle shake of his head. The mother, as you might imagine, is not handling this development well at all. We watched, a sense of grim satisfaction mixing with lingering apprehension, as Reagan, still wild-eyed and vehemently screaming accusations of kidnapping and elaborate conspiracies, was firmly but carefully placed into a separate police cruiser, her predictable narrative crumbling around her. Meanwhile, Lily, her small frame looking fragile yet resilient, was gently assisted into the waiting ambulance, a compassionate female officer by her side, offering a reassuring presence and a much-needed sense of security. "Can we see her?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper, desperate for a glimpse of her safety. "Not yet," the officer replied softly, "but she specifically asked me to tell you both that she's okay. More importantly, she conveyed that she's ready now, ready to tell the complete truth about everything she's experienced, ready for her voice to finally be heard." As the last wails of the ambulance faded into the distance and the police cars disappeared down the winding road, Catherine and I remained in the car, enveloped in a stunned, almost reverent silence. The enormity of what had just transpired, the sheer relief, and the daunting path ahead, left us momentarily speechless. A sober understanding settled in. This wasn't the end, far from it. We knew, with a weary certainty, that a formidable journey lay ahead, a labyrinth of official investigations, grueling court battles, and undoubtedly, many more of Reagan's insidious manipulations to confront and dismantle. Yet, amidst the looming challenges, there was an undeniable, profound sense of victory. For the first time in what felt like an interminable eternity, weeks that had stretched into a lifetime of anxiety, Lily was definitively out of her mother's immediate, suffocating control. A sanctuary finally granted, my phone buzzed, a jolt of reality. It was Emma, her calls incessant, her voice undoubtedly edged with desperation for any scrap of news. "She's safe," I managed to say, the words catching in my throat, imbued with a weight of emotion I hadn't realized I was carrying. "Lily's safe, Emma." Emma's immediate, raw sobs of relief, though miles away, resonated deeply, perfectly mirroring the tumultuous wave of emotion that finally threatened to overwhelm me. We had waged a tireless, relentless campaign, fighting through a seemingly impenetrable thicket of Reagan's calculated lies, her cunning manipulations, and her relentless intimidation tactics. Our resolve had been tested by frivolous lawsuits, insidious harassment campaigns, and even the deliberate attempt to inflict social destruction upon our lives and reputations. But through it all, through every setback and every exhausting confrontation, one truth remained unshakable. We had never, not once, ceased fighting for Lily's well-being, for her right to a life free from abuse. The war, we understood, was far from over. Reagan, a master of psychological warfare, would undoubtedly regroup, her cunning mind already devising new strategies, new insidious ways to distort reality and paint herself as the ultimate victim in her perverse narrative. Yet, the tide had unequivocally turned. Lily had found her voice a beacon of truth in the murky waters of deceit, and with her brave words finally being heard by those in power, Reagan's meticulously constructed facade, a towering edifice of lies, was irrevocably beginning to crumble, brick by fragile brick. As Catherine and I began the long, quiet drive home, my mind, despite the exhaustion, drifted back to an earlier image, the teenage Reagan, vibrant and full of youthful aspirations, who had once, perhaps genuinely, dreamed of the profound joy and responsibility of motherhood. But somewhere, at some indiscernible point along the treacherous path of her life, that once innocent dream had curdled and twisted, morphing into something utterly toxic, suffocatingly possessive, and ultimately, profoundly destructive, a nightmare for anyone caught in its wake, especially her own child. Yet, her daughter, our brave, impossibly resilient Lily, had somehow not only endured but survived this distorted version of motherhood, emerging scarred but unbroken. And with a renewed, fierce determination, we silently vowed that she would never again have to navigate the darkness of that twisted reality alone. We would be her unwavering shield, her constant advocate, every step of the way. The journey back from the cabin, though physically uneventful, felt utterly surreal, as if we were navigating through a hazy dreamscape after the intense, terrifying reality we had just experienced. Catherine, her nerves still frayed, compulsively checked her rearview mirror, a subconscious act of vigilance, half expecting Reagan, like some malevolent phantom, to materialize out of the twilight and pursue us relentlessly. Meanwhile, my phone had transformed into a relentless conduit of anxiety, vibrating incessantly with a flurry of urgent texts, desperate inquiries from Emma, strategic updates from my lawyer, and even messages from extended family members who had attended the reunion, all desperate for information. We eventually pulled into a brightly lit gas station, seeking a brief respite, a moment to simply breathe and process. While Catherine methodically filled the tank, I immediately returned my lawyer's call, eager for legal guidance in the rapidly unfolding aftermath. "The police contacted me moments ago," he stated, his voice devoid of pleasantries, cutting straight to the crucial points. "Reagan is indeed in custody for now, but let's be realistic, that situation is temporary. Given the charges, or lack thereof at this preliminary stage, she almost certainly make bail within hours, if not sooner. Therefore, he stressed, the urgency palpable in his tone. Our absolute priority is to move with unprecedented speed on emergency custody proceedings for Lily, before Reagan can regain any semblance of legal leverage or control. What are our chances? I asked, my voice tight with apprehension, grasping for a measure of hope. They are significantly better now, he conceded, given that Lily has courageously spoken directly to the authorities, providing her own testimony. However, do not underestimate Reagan. She will fight this every accusation, every legal challenge with every ounce of cunning and ferocity she possesses. Catherine re-entered the car, her face a mask of grim concern, reflecting a new piece of unsettling news. My cousin, who works at the hospital, just texted me, she announced, her voice strained. They're admitting Lily for a 72-hour psychiatric hold. It's standard procedure, apparently, given the traumatic circumstances and the nature of her disclosures. A necessary but difficult step. Without a moment's hesitation, we redirected our course, driving straight to the hospital, the urgent need to be near Lily eclipsing all other concerns. In the bustling hospital lobby, we were met by the same compassionate doctor who had attended to Lily before, his expression visibly softening with relief at our arrival. A testament to the trust Lily had placed in us. She's been asking for both of you, he shared, a gentle smile touching his lips. While I can't disclose specific details due to patient confidentiality, I can assure you she has been incredibly articulate and clear about her experiences. Child Protective Services is already deeply involved, as you would expect. Just then, a new figure appeared as social worker, distinct from the one who had previously visited my home. Her presence indicating a fresh phase of intervention. She introduced herself as Miss Rodriguez, her demeanor professional yet empathetic, and requested a private conversation, signaling the weight of what was to come. Lily has disclosed some profoundly concerning information, Miss Rodriguez began, her words measured and deliberate, which has led us to immediately open a formal investigation. As part of this, and of paramount importance, we need to establish a robust safety plan for her eventual discharge from the hospital. She can stay with me, I offered without a second's hesitation. My voice firm with conviction, the only logical solution in my mind. Miss Rodriguez, however, gently shook her head, her expression regretful. Given the existing restraining order that Reagan filed against you, that arrangement, unfortunately, becomes legally complicated. Our primary concern is Lily's safety, and under these circumstances, we are legally mandated to consider emergency foster placement. Unless a blood relative is immediately able to take her in, Catherine, who had been listening intently, leaned forward, her eyes blazing with renewed purpose. I'm her aunt, she declared, her voice strong and resolute. I'll take her, she's family. She belongs with us, Ms. Rodriguez nodded, making swift, concise notes in her pad. That's a viable option, she acknowledged. We'll still need to conduct a thorough home study and comprehensive background checks, of course. It's a standard process, but given the urgent and exceptional circumstances, we can certainly expedite it considerably. Just as a glimmer of hope began to solidify, my phone screamed to life again. It was Emma, her voice frantic, barely coherent through a torrent of panic. Mom, Reagan's out. The line went dead, leaving an echoing silence pregnant with fresh, terrifying uncertainty. The Instagram notification flashed, a stark beacon in the quiet of the evening. It was Reagan, again, her latest tirade splashed across the digital canvas. You and Catherine kidnapped Lily and brainwashed the police, the caption screamed, a furious indictment that felt both surreal and utterly terrifying. I felt a cold dread creep up my spine as I showed the post to Catherine, her face draining of color as she read the inflammatory words. Reagan had, with some twisted ingenuity, managed to snap a selfie right there in the police station. Her image was a testament to her current state, undeniably haggard, eyes bloodshot and skin sallow, yet a disturbing glint of defiance shone through. Almost a badge of honor for her perceived martyrdom. The accompanying caption was a sprawling, incoherent tapestry of accusations, a bewildering saga of alleged corruption, elaborate conspiracy theories, and, of course, the ever-present jealous relatives supposedly plotting to abduct her baby. It wasn't just rambling. It was a frenzied torrent of disjointed phrases, each one a brushstroke and a portrait of a mind losing its grip on reality. She's truly spiraling, Catherine murmured, her voice laced with a mixture of pity and alarm, a sigh escaping her lips. On one hand, this chaotic display actually strengthens our case, showcasing her severe instability. But on the other, I'm gripped by a chilling worrying about what desperate, irreversible act Reagan might commit next. She's already proven, time and again, that she views every boundary as merely a suggestion, a line drawn in sand that she's eager to cross, like a wild animal cornered. That day, the hospital protocols, the mountains of bureaucratic paperwork, proved an insurmountable barrier to seeing Lily, yet a brief conversation with the nurse offered a small, comforting reprieve. Her tone, calm and reassuring, confirmed Lily was stable and had even eaten dinner. A fleeting victory, a tiny ember of hope in the gathering storm. The very next morning shattered that fragile peace, unleashing a fresh wave of chaos. Reagan, it seemed, had exchanged her previous, more conventional family attorney for a new legal weapon, a lawyer notorious for embracing sensational, highly controversial cases. He wasted no time, immediately filing aggressive motions demanding Lily's instant return to Reagan's custody, brazenly alleging kidnapping and a grand conspiracy. The news felt like a physical blow. My lawyer immediately convened an emergency meeting, her voice serious, forewarning us of the escalated legal assault. She's also filed criminal charges against you and Catherine. Our lawyer stated, the words hanging heavy in the air, false imprisonment, conspiracy to kidnap, and intentional infliction of emotional distress. The sheer audacity, the transparent absurdity of it all was infuriating. It's all baseless, of course, she continued, a desperate attempt to regain control. But we must respond decisively. Catherine, her face a mask of furious disbelief, slammed her hand onto the polished table, the sharp thud echoing the frustration in her voice. She cannot keep getting away with this, she exclaimed, her gaze pleading for an end to the madness. And she won't, our lawyer calmly interjected, her steady voice a much-needed anchor in the swirling turmoil. Every erratic move she makes, every reckless accusation, is meticulously documented. The judge will discern the pattern, like a tapestry of self-incrimination slowly revealing itself. That very afternoon, a crucial piece of our defense arrived, literally flying in from Colorado. Jessica, Reagan's former roommate. She had made the arduous journey specifically to offer an in-person, first-hand account of Reagan's deeply troubling past behaviors. We met in a quiet, unassuming coffee shop near the courthouse, the hushed clatter of mugs and murmured conversations providing a stark contrast to the gravity of our discussion. For 15 agonizing years, I've carried this corrosive guilt, Jessica confessed, her voice barely above a whisper, her eyes haunted by distant memories. I knew, deep down, she was capable of inflicting this kind of pain on someone else. I should have fought harder, screamed louder, warned people about her true nature. My heart ached for her unspoken burden. You were young and terrified, I gently reminded her, reaching across the table to touch her arm. What truly matters, Jessica, is that you are here now, bravely choosing to speak your truth. With a deep, resolute breath, Jessica produced a thick, worn folder. Its contents a testament to a long-held secret. I kept absolutely everything, she revealed, the weight of the past tangible in her hands. Every chilling, threatening letter, every absurd legal document, even painfully authentic recordings of her voicemails. My therapist once suggested it might help me process the trauma someday. I suppose, she said, offering a fragile, bittersweet smile. Today is that day. Just then, Catherine's phone buzzed, a sharp, unwelcome intrusion. It was a text from her cousin, a nurse at the hospital. Reagan had reappeared, staging another dramatic scene, belligerently demanding to see Lily. Security had no choice but to physically escort her out when her shouting escalated into a full-blown public spectacle. She's sinking deeper into desperation, Catherine observed, her face grim. The emergency custody hearing, a pivotal moment in this protracted battle, was scheduled for the very next morning. That night, sleep was an elusive phantom, my mind a churning vortex of anxiety. Emma, sensing my distress, stayed up with me, her presence a quiet comfort. What if the judge somehow believes Reagan's version of events? Emma whispered, articulating the very fear that gnawed my own resolve. No, I countered, striving to inject more confidence into my voice than I genuinely felt. We have the truth on our side, and in a court of law, that must prevail. The courthouse the following day was utterly packed, a testament to the emotional weight of the case. Reagan had managed to rally her dwindling battalion of remaining supporters, a mere handful of individuals who, despite all evidence, clung stubbornly to her distorted version of reality. Yet, our side was a comforting sea of solidarity. Catherine's family had shown up in force, a united front. Several of Lily's dedicated teachers were present. Their concern palpable. Even Mia and her mother, who had their own complex history with Reagan, had come to lend their silent but powerful support. Then, Reagan made her grand entrance. She strode through the courtroom doors as if walking a red carpet, impeccably dressed, every strand of hair in place, her new, notoriously aggressive lawyer a grim shadow at her side. Her eyes, cold and unwavering, met mine across the packed room, and she offered a chilling, almost predatory smile, a silent declaration of war. The judge, an older woman with eyes that seemed to miss nothing, her demeanor radiating quiet authority, promptly called the hearing to order. Reagan's lawyer, a master of theatrical manipulation, began his opening statement, meticulously crafting a tragic narrative. He painted a meticulous, yet utterly false, portrait of a devoted, loving mother whose mentally ill daughter had been cruelly manipulated by jealous relatives and a possessive family friend, a thinly veiled accusation directed squarely at us. He spun a web of deception, twisting facts into a compelling, if entirely fabricated, tale designed to evoke sympathy. Then it was our lawyer's turn. Her presentation was a stark, unembellished counter-narrative, a formidable bulwark of undeniable facts and irrefutable proof. She methodically laid out our case, the extensive documentation detailing Reagan's history, the damning text messages, Jessica's courageous and detailed testimony exposing Reagan's past patterns of behavior, the hospital records painting a clear picture of Lily's distress, and most poignantly, Lily's own words to the authorities, a child's truth piercing through the adult lies. As the weight of the evidence mounted, Reagan's composure began to visibly fray. She couldn't contain herself. Fidgeting nervously, she began to interrupt, first with whispered asides, then with increasingly audible interjections, much to her lawyer's growing desperation, as he repeatedly attempted, in vain, to quiet her. When the judge, her voice now sharp with warning, cautioned Reagan about contempt of court, Reagan abruptly rose to her feet, a tempest brewing in her eyes. "This is my daughter," she shrieked, her voice echoing through the tense courtroom. These people have deliberately poisoned her mind against me. They've always been insidiously jealous of our unbreakable bond. The judge's gavel came down with a sharp, resounding crack that reverberated through the silence. Ms. Reagan, she stated, her voice unwavering, you will control yourself immediately, or you will be removed from this courtroom. But Reagan was far beyond the reach of reason or control. Her eyes, wild with an uncontrollable fury, fixed on me. Her face twisted into a grotesque mask of pure rage, a vein throbbing visibly in her temple. She wanted my life, Reagan screamed, pointing a trembling, accusatory finger directly at me. She wanted my daughter. She planned this entire scheme from the very beginning. Security officers, their faces grim, began to move towards her. Reagan's lawyer, visibly horrified, tried to intervene, to physically restrain his client, but she violently shoved him aside, a primal scream tearing from her throat, Lily is mine. I gave birth to her, I own her. She doesn't get to choose who she wants to be with. The judge, her patience utterly exhausted, swiftly ordered Reagan's immediate removal from the courtroom. As security escorted her out, Reagan was still screaming, her voice raw and hoarse, about ownership, about betrayal, her words dissolving into a cacophony of incoherent fury. Her lawyer, shoulders slumped, looked utterly defeated, the image of a general whose entire army had imploded before his eyes. The judge, with a weary sigh, called for a recess. When the court finally reconvened, the chair where Reagan had sat moments earlier was conspicuously, blessedly empty. Her lawyer, a ghost of his former aggressive self, made a weak, half-hearted attempt to continue his argument. But the damage was irreversible. The entire charade had collapsed under the weight of Reagan's own unraveling. The judge, her gaze sweeping across the courtroom, her voice clear and decisive, spoke. I have thoroughly reviewed all the presented evidence, she declared, her eyes settling on us, and crucially, I have witnessed Ms. Reagan's behavior firsthand in this very courtroom today. Then came the words we had desperately prayed for. I am therefore granting emergency temporary custody of Lily to Catherine Patterson. Pending a full investigation by Child Protective Services, a monumental wave of relief, so profound it was almost physically debilitating, washed over me, a dam breaking inside my chest. Catherine, her eyes brimming with inched tears, instinctively grabbed my hand, squeezing it so tightly it almost hurt. Behind us, I heard Emma let out a choked sob of pure, unadulterated relief, a sound that perfectly mirrored the torrent of emotions within me, but the judge wasn't quite finished. Furthermore, she continued, her gaze now fixed directly on me. I am also lifting the restraining order previously issued against you. It is abundantly clear to this court that it was filed in egregious bad faith, designed solely to inflict harm and control. Another layer of vindication, a breath of freedom. However, the judge emphasized, her tone shifting slightly, I want to make one thing absolutely clear. Lily's well-being remains the paramount concern. Any and all future decisions regarding her living situation will be made solely by Child Protective Services and her appointed legal guardian. We left the courthouse in a daze, the world outside feeling strangely muted, as if we had stepped into a dream. Reagan was nowhere to be seen, her absence a stark contrast to her earlier theatricality, though her car remained, a silent sentinel of her abrupt departure, still parked defiantly in the lot. Her lawyer, looking utterly frustrated and defeated, was hunched over his phone, his face a roadmap of exasperation. Catherine, with a newfound urgency, drove us straight to the hospital. With the official custody order now firmly in hand, we were finally allowed to see Lily. She was sitting up in bed, looking small but resilient, engrossed in drawing something abstract in a well-worn sketchbook. The moment she saw us, her eyes widened and she dropped everything, scrambling off the bed and running straight into Catherine's outstretched arms, burying her face into her shoulder. Is it over? She whispered, her voice muffled, thick with both fear and hope. Catherine hugged her tight, her own voice carefully measured, a gentle balm for Lily's fragile heart. The hearing is over, sweet pea, she said. And you're coming home with me. As soon as the doctors say you're ready, Lily pulled back, her gaze shifting to me, a thoughtful crease appearing between her brows. What about my mom? She asked, her voice small. I chose my words with the utmost care, navigating the delicate emotional landscape. She's going to get help, Lily, I explained gently. But right now, our absolute focus is on making sure you are safe, healthy, and happy. Lily nodded slowly, processing the difficult information. She showed up yesterday, Lily then recounted, her voice calmer than I expected, and told the nurses I was lying about everything. When they wouldn't let her see me, she just started screaming about lawsuits. She paused. Then, a surprising exhalation of relief escaped her. Pieces that seemed to genuinely capture the nuances of her emotional journey sketch, each scribbled poem, a fragile echo of her internal world, slowly moving from shadowed figures to vibrant, hopeful bursts of color. A tangible flicker of light pierced through Lily's quiet despair. Emma, her unwavering confidant, would be allowed to visit tomorrow, and the mere thought brightened Lily's spirits considerably. A fragile smile playing on her lips for the first time in days. As we prepared to leave the hospital, a somber figure intercepted us in the hushed, sterile hallway, Ms. Rodriguez. Her expression was grave, her voice a low, urgent murmur. Reagan's been making threats, she confided quietly, her gaze sweeping the empty corridor as if fearing eavesdroppers. Nothing specific enough for an immediate arrest, subtly, but undeniably concerning. The escalating pattern, the veiled menace it points to a dangerous instability. We're recommending a comprehensive security plan be put in place for when Lily's discharged, she concluded, the weight of her words hanging heavy in the air, a chilling premonition. That very night, Reagan's digital footprint vanished entirely. Her once active social media accounts, repositories of curated glamour and veiled passive aggression, went completely dark. Every trace, every post, every connection simply disappeared into the ether. It should have been reassuring, a definitive sign of retreat, perhaps even surrender. But instead, an icy dread snaked its way through me, settling deep in my gut. Was this truly a sign of defeat, or something far more sinister? Reagan didn't retreat. She simply regrouped, like a predator melting into the shadows, calculating her next, more strategic move. It was the calm before, I feared, a more ferocious storm. The next day, while Emma brought much-needed teenage normalcy and laughter to Lily at the hospital, I helped Catherine prepare her house for Lily's homecoming. We meticulously set up a guest room, transforming it into a cozy sanctuary with soft blankets and a stack of reassuring books. We bought every comfort food Lily might desire, attempting to imbue every corner with warmth and welcome, creating a haven from the storm. Amidst our hopeful preparations, the shrill ring of Catherine's phone shattered the peaceful domesticity. It was her elderly aunt, her voice trembling, ragged with fear. Reagan just left here, she stammered, the words barely coherent. She was asking for money, saying she desperately needed it for a new lawyer. When I refused, she became nasty. Accused me of betraying her, of turning against her like everyone else. The encounter had clearly left the vulnerable woman shaken to her core. We immediately called our lawyer, recounting the disturbing incident. His advice was grim, reinforcing our growing fears. Document absolutely everything, and, crucially, vary our routines. Reagan, he warned, was becoming dangerously unpredictable, a loose cannon veering wildly off course. That evening, a number I didn't recognize flashed on my phone screen. Against every instinct, against my better judgment, a knot of morbid curiosity mixed with sheer dread compelled me to answer. You think you've won? Reagan's voice cut through the line, shockingly different. It was flat, utterly devoid of emotion, a chilling monotone that conveyed more menace than any shout. But this isn't over. I know judges. I know lawyers. I'll get her back. My heart hammered against my ribs. Reagan, I pleaded, trying to inject some reason into the void. You need help. Her response was immediate, unyielding, almost robotic. I need my daughter, and I'll do whatever it takes. The line went dead with an abrupt click, leaving an unsettling silence in its wake. I reported the call immediately, detailing every chilling word. The police took a report, but their faces were grim. Without a direct, explicit threat, they explained, their hands were tied. We were on our own. Lily was discharged the next morning. Catherine and I picked her up together, our eyes constantly scanning the parking lot, every shadow, every parked car, for any sign of Reagan. The paranoia was thick, but mercifully, there was no sign of her. Lily remained quiet on the drive to Catherine's house, a small, withdrawn figure in the back seat, clutching a well-loved blanket. When we finally arrived, she didn't rush inside. Instead, she stood in the driveway for a long moment, simply breathing in the crisp air, her chest rising and falling visibly. It feels different, she whispered, her voice barely audible, a fragile revelation. Safer, the simplicity of her words spoke volumes about the profound relief washing over her. The first few days were a difficult adjustment, a raw manifestation of the trauma she carried. Lily flinched at every car door slam, her shoulders tightening, eyes darting anxiously. She checked locks obsessively, double-checking, triple-checking, as if a thin metal bolt could truly ward off the lurking fear. Catherine, a pillar of calm, was endlessly patient, providing quiet reassurance and ample space, yet always ensuring Lily felt unconditionally supported. Emma, bless her heart, visited daily after school, a vibrant splash of normalcy. Watching them together doing homework, collapsing in fits of giggles over silly videos, just being teenagers was a stark, poignant reminder of precisely what we were fighting for, Lily's right to a carefree youth. Then, inevitably, Reagan surfaced again. Catherine's neighbor called, her voice tight with concern. Someone had been sitting in a dark car outside the house for hours, an unsettling presence. By the time police arrived, the vehicle was, predictably, gone, but the quick-thinking neighbor had snapped several photos. The grainy images, even with sunglasses and a wide-brimmed hat, left no doubt. It was unmistakably Reagan. The restraining order Catherine filed was granted immediately, but a piece of paper, however legally binding, felt woefully insufficient, like trying to stop a tidal wave with a flimsy picket fence. Against Reagan's rapidly escalating, unhinged behavior, the next week brought an unexpected, profound development. Reagan's mother, Mrs. Patterson, reached out to Catherine, requesting a meeting. She wanted to apologize, to understand what had really happened, a glimmer of truth finally piercing through years of denial. We met at a neutral location, a quiet restaurant downtown, the hushed ambience a stark contrast to the churning emotions. Mrs. Patterson looked considerably older than I remembered, her face etched with profound weariness, worn down not just by time, but by recent, shattering events. I believed her, she confessed, tears welling in her eyes, her voice thick with regret. My own daughter, and I believed every lie she spun. Even when things clearly didn't add up, I made excuses, rationalized away the inconsistencies, desperate to maintain the illusion. She pulled out her phone. It screamed, displaying a chilling chronicle of Reagan's unraveling text messages, a barrage of demands for money, ugly threats when refused, frantic accusations that everyone, even her own mother, had turned against her. She needs help, Mrs. Patterson reiterated, her voice breaking. But she won't accept it. She's utterly convinced everyone else is the problem, never herself. Catherine, seizing the moment, asked softly, "What about Lily? Do you want to see her, Mrs.?" Patterson nodded eagerly, a fragile hope blossoming in her tear-stained eyes. "If she had me, I understand completely if she doesn't trust me. I failed her when she needed family most, when she deserved protection." We cautiously arranged a meeting at Catherine's house. Lily was understandably nervous, her small hands twisting in her lap, but she bravely agreed. The reunion was tentative at first, awkward silences punctuated by hesitant glances, but when Mrs. Patterson finally, genuinely apologized, taking full responsibility for her past blindness, for not seeing the painful truth that was right in front of her, something profound shifted. A visible release of tension, a softening in Lily's guarded posture. "I should have known, Mrs. Patterson murmured, her voice laced with self-reproach. "The way Reagan talked about you, even as a baby, like you were a possession, not a person. I dismissed it as just intense new mother protectiveness, but it was always there, wasn't it?" Lily listened, her young mind processing this agonizing, new piece of her personal history. "I used to think it was my fault," Lily confessed, her voice barely a whisper, a tear tracing a path down her cheek. "That if I was just a better daughter, she'd love me the way other moms love their kids. Oh, sweetheart, Mrs. Patterson choked out, her own eyes brimming, and without hesitation, she pulled Lily into a long, overdue, comforting hug. "None of this was ever your fault." Progress, as expected, came slowly, measured in small, courageous steps. Lily began therapy, a difficult but essential journey into healing. Catherine, in an act of profound renewal, enrolled her in a new school, offering a true fresh start, a chance to forge new friendships and reclaim her identity. Emma, through it all, remained her steadfast constant, their bond forged and strengthened by the storms they had weathered together. Reagan's harassment, true to her nature, continued, but it became less direct, more insidious. Fake social media accounts sprouted like digital weeds, spreading insidious lies. Anonymous letters, dripping with venom and baseless accusations, found their way to Catherine's employer. Frivolous complaints were filed with various agencies, all ultimately dismissed, but each requiring precious time and emotional energy to address, a relentless, draining war of attrition. Then came the final custody hearing, the culmination of months of anguish and uncertainty. 3 months after that terrifying night at the cabin, we were back in court, the familiar, sterile surroundings now imbued with a renewed sense of gravity. Reagan had, predictably, acquired yet another new lawyer, her forth a clear indication of her instability. She had lost a noticeable amount of weight, her once flashy designer clothes replaced by conservative, somber suits. A transparent attempt to project an air of stability and control she clearly lacked. The courtroom was packed again, a silent, expectant audience for the final act of this protracted drama. This time, however, the evidence presented was overwhelming, a tidal wave of truth washing over Reagan's flimsy defenses. Lily's therapist testified with clinical precision about the profound emotional abuse Lily had endured. Teachers, with heartbreaking specificity, described the dramatic, positive change in Lily's demeanor and academic performance since leaving Reagan's chaotic care. Miss Rodriguez, with unwavering professionalism, presented her meticulously compiled investigation findings, leaving no stone unturned. And then, the most potent testimony of all, when Lily herself, a testament to courage, took the stand, the entire courtroom fell into a profound, breathless silence. She spoke clearly, her voice steady despite the obvious tremor in her hands, describing years of subtle manipulation, stifling control, and devastating emotional neglect. She recounted, with painful clarity, the terrifying vacation, the subsequent hospital stay, the crushing isolation that followed. Then, in a moment of profound, gut-wrenching honesty, Lily looked directly at Reagan, her gaze unwavering. "I love my mom," she declared, her voice cracking slightly, "but I'm scared of her. She doesn't see me as a person, just something she owns." At that devastating declaration, Reagan's carefully constructed mask finally, completely slipped. For just a fleeting, horrifying moment, raw, unbridled rage flashed across her face, contorting her features, before her lawyer instinctively touched her arm, a silent, urgent reminder that the judge was watching, that her performance was still paramount. The judge's decision, when it came, was swift and unequivocal. Permanent custody was granted to Catherine. Supervised visitation for Reagan would only be considered if she completed extensive therapy and parenting classes, a formidable hurdle for someone so resistant to self-reflection. And crucially, a permanent restraining order was issued, forming a legal shield protecting Lily, Catherine, Emma, Emmy from any further direct contact. Reagan stood up slowly, a puppet whose strings had finally been cut. "This isn't over," she announced, her voice surprisingly loud, echoing through the now-silent courtroom, a chilling promise of continued defiance. Her lawyer grabbed her arm, a futile attempt to escort her quietly, but she violently shook him off, walking out with her head held defiantly high. Yet, as she passed, I saw her hands, clenched tightly at her sides, shaking uncontrollably, a tremor betraying the utter devastation of her defeat. Outside the courthouse, our small group shared a quiet, profound celebration. It wasn't boisterous or loud, it was a collective exhale, a deep, shared sense of relief. Lily hugged everyone, tears streaming down her face. But these were not tears of sorrow, they were tears of immense, overwhelming relief, washing away months of fear and anxiety. Is it really over? She asked, her voice small, almost disbelieving. Catherine, her eyes tender, kissed Lily's forehead, her voice firm with wisdom and hope. The legal part is, sweetheart. But the healing part, that's just beginning. 6 months later, life had begun to blossom, finding a new, steady rhythm, painting itself in brighter, more hopeful hues. We finally settled into a new, albeit still fragile, rhythm. Lily, in particular, blossomed at her new school, finding not just a safe haven, but a place where her burgeoning artistic talent truly began to flourish, gaining genuine recognition from her teachers and peers alike. Her bond with her friend, Emma, remained as steadfast and unbreakable as ever, a constant source of laughter and shared secrets. And through it all, Catherine, with her unwavering strength and profound empathy, had seamlessly stepped into the role of the devoted mother figure Lily had always yearned for, a steady anchor in a sea of past instability. Reagan, on the other hand, had simply vanished after the final, grueling hearing. The rumors, whispered like ghost stories, varied wildly. Some claimed she had fled the state, seeking anonymity elsewhere. Others, with a more chilling certainty, insisted she was still lurking in the shadows, an unseen predator, watching, waiting for an opportune moment to resurface. Her social media, once a carefully curated stage for her manufactured persona, remained eerily dark. A digital void that offered no clues, only amplified the unsettling silence. Even now, months later, I still found myself reflexively checking my rearview mirror far more often than necessary, my gaze darting to every unfamiliar car, every shadowed corner. My heart still hammered a frantic rhythm against my ribs whenever an unknown number flashed across my phone screen, a primal, visceral reaction to the lingering threat. The profound, insidious trauma of those months didn't simply evaporate with the finality of a judge's gavel or the stroke of a court order. It embedded itself deep within our collective psyche, a scar tissue that throbbed with every new uncertainty. But then I would catch a glimpse of Lily, her face radiant with uninhibited joy as she laughed effortlessly with Emma. I'd witness her confidence, once so fragile, bloom with vibrant resilience, her voice growing stronger, her opinions more assured. We were even making concrete plans for college, discussing our schools and future dreams with an optimism that once felt impossible. In those moments, a profound sense of peace would wash over me, a quiet, knowing affirmation that every single battle, every tear, every agonizing doubt, it had all, unequivocally, been worth it. She'd survived, yes, but more than that, she was living, and so, in our own ways, had we all. The last time I physically saw Reagan was utterly unexpected, a jarring collision of past and present in the mundane fluorescent aisles of a grocery store. Almost a full year after the initial nightmare began. She was noticeably thinner, her frame almost gaunt, and her hair was styled differently, a deliberate attempt at disguise perhaps, but I knew her instantly. It was a recognition born not of affection, but of a deep, ingrained fear. Our eyes, two opposing forces of a forgotten war, locked across the vibrant expanse of the produce section, a frozen tableau amidst the everyday hustle. For what felt like an eternity, neither of us moved, suspended in that charged space, the weight of our shared, terrible history hanging heavy in the air. Then, with a sudden, almost panic jerk, she turned on her heel and walked away, abandoning her half-filled shopping cart, as if it were a burning ember. I remained rooted to the spot, trembling uncontrollably, my body bracing for a confrontation that never materialized, a strange, hollow anticlimax. When I finally managed to steer myself to my car, my hands still shaking, the first person I called was Catherine. She's still here. I managed to choke out the word stick with a renewed sense of dread. I know, Catherine replied, her voice calm yet laced with a knowing weariness that chilled me to the bone. Lily saw her outside the art supply store last week, just watching. Like she always does, a cold knot tightened in my stomach. What do we do? I asked, my voice barely a whisper. Catherine's answer was firm, a mantra we'd adopted. We keep living. We keep protecting Lily with every fiber of our being. And we keep documenting everything, meticulously. She paused, her sigh heavy with the wisdom of experience. She lost, yes, but people like Reagan don't truly accept defeat. They don't just fade away, they simply wait. They bide their time for another opportunity, another opening. It wasn't the neat, satisfying closure I had desperately craved. There was no clean, redemptive ending where Reagan miraculously sought help and transformed into the nurturing mother Lily so profoundly deserved. No reconciliation, no heartwarming story of personal growth. Instead, it was an uneasy, fragile truce, a constant state of heightened vigilance, always watching for her next calculated move. But despite the persistent shadow, Lily was unequivocally safe. She was enveloped in love, finally free to explore who she was, to truly be herself without the crippling fear of her mother's unpredictable, venomous reactions. She had Catherine, her steadfast grandmother Emma, and a real family, chosen not by blood, but by love, and fiercely fought for. Some nights, the nightmares still steal into my sleep, vivid and terrifying. That sterile hospital room, Reagan's cold, dismissive choice of a beach vacation over her dying daughter. I wake up in a fresh wave of incandescent fury, the injustice searing through me anew. But then, as the anger slowly recedes, I remember Lily's art show last month. I recall how she positively glowed with pride, her face alight, surrounded by a chorus of genuine appreciation and the people who truly, unconditionally loved her. Reagan had, with her insidious lawsuits and calculated lies, tried to systematically dismantle everyone who dared to challenge her. She'd wielded legal documents and deceptive narratives like sharpened weapons, twisting systems designed to protect innocent children into insidious instruments of her own manipulative control. She had, terrifyingly, come within a hair's breadth of winning. Yet, love drew. Unconditional love. Not the suffocating, possessive obsession Reagan so perversely mislabeled as affection proved to be an infinitely stronger force. It was that fierce, unyielding love that compelled us to fight, to cling to hope, when giving up would have been an immeasurably easier path. It was that love that forged unexpected alliances, bringing together strangers like Jessica and solidifying the bonds of family like Catherine. Most importantly, it was that love that imbued Lily with the profound courage to finally speak her truth, to reclaim her voice. The war, I acknowledge, might not be entirely over. Reagan might still be out there, plotting, scheming her next move from the periphery. But for now, Lily was healing, she was living, she was thriving, and in every beautiful, courageous breath she took, that was an undeniable, magnificent victory.